Ladies and gentlemen, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where you are joining us from. As we start this very important conversation, might I kindly ask for everyone to please have their microphones on mute. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the Africa launch event for the 2021 International Year for the Elimination of Child Labour. My name is Nozi Poshabalala, and it is an absolute pleasure to serve you today as the moderator of this very, very important conversation. Thank you very much for having me. Now, we have gathered far and wide because of our shared conviction that we can galvanize more action in 2021. We've gathered because we have a shared belief that in this year and leading up to 2025, we can really begin to turn commitments into action. Ladies and gentlemen, if one thing is clear, it's that many actions in many parts of the world can lead to global change. It's the only way that we overcame traditional slavery in the 1800s. Indeed, it is the only way that we dismantled apartheid in the early 90s. And so today, in the same spirit, we now approach target 8.7, and we're saying that with coordinated action across a multiplicity of stakeholders, we can see measurable outcomes. But it would be amiss of us not to take a moment just to contextualize this moment in history. If we fail, ladies and gentlemen, to act decisively, COVID-19 will dilute and erase some of the progress that we have made in the fight against child labor. And so today, we must also take a moment to tighten our resolve in ensuring that even in the crisis response and recovery, we are thinking about Africa and the world's children. And so in this conversation, you're going to hear from child labor survivors, from activists, from world leaders. You're going to hear from employers, from workers' organizations. You're going to hear from governments. You're going to hear from regional economic communities. All of these stakeholders committed to taking action in big and in small ways. And so perhaps a question to you, how might you begin to take action? Well, there is something that you can do right now, and that is by amplifying this conversation on our social media channels using the hashtag End Child Labour 2021. There you have it. It is on your screen. And of course, you can also visit our website, www.endchildlabour2021.org. Now, before we get started, I do want to remind you of the diversity of our continent, and that you can actually follow this conversation in Arabic, in English, in French, and in Portuguese. And all you need to do is just select the language of interpretation at the bottom of your screen. And so, ladies and gentlemen, let's get started. I'm going to start off by taking us back to December 2019. When in Abidjan, the African Union Specialized Technical Committee, or the STC, as we call our committees on social development, labor and employment, adopted the African Union 10-year action plan on child labor, forced labor, modern slavery, and human trafficking, looking at the time frame 2020 to 2030. And this, ladies and gentlemen, marked a distinct turning point in our efforts to end child labor in Africa. And so our very first speaker today is the chair of this STC, but this body is also responsible for monitoring the progress and implementation of this action plan. Please allow me to share this message that has been shared with us by His Excellency Seni Mahamadou Odorago, who is the Minister of Public Service, Labor and Social Protection of Burkina Faso, but also in the context of this conversation, the chair of the African Union for this particular committee. Ladies and gentlemen, let's hear from His Excellency.
Mesdames et messieurs, chers participants, bonjour. C'est pour moi un plaisir et un honneur de présider cette importante cérémonie de lancement de l'année internationale pour l'élimination du travail des enfants en Afrique. Organisée par l'Union africaine avec l'appui des Nations unies et du Bureau international du travail, le lancement de cette journée s'inscrit dans la dynamique d'une prise de conscience collective de l'ampleur du phénomène du travail des enfants sur le continent africain. Le 21 janvier dernier, lors du lancement de la journée au niveau mondial, l'Organisation internationale du travail a déploré que malgré une réduction de 38% au cours de la dernière décennie, 152 millions d'enfants travaillent encore pour gagner leur vie, et ce, dans un contexte où la COVID, qui a entraîné une hausse de la pauvreté dans les familles, a considérablement aggravé la situation. Mesdames et messieurs, il importe de rappeler que l'Afrique est le continent le plus touché par la problématique du travail des enfants. En effet, elle compte environ 72 millions d'enfants travailleurs, dont 31 millions d'entre eux effectuent un travail jugé dangereux au regard des circonstances dans lesquelles ce travail est effectué. Un cinquième des enfants africains est astreint au travail des enfants, une proportion 2 fois plus élevée que dans toutes les autres régions du monde. C'est donc soucieux de mener en toute responsabilité une lutte acharnée contre ce fléau que notre continent s'est doté d'un plan d'action décennal pour l'élimination du travail des enfants. Ce plan, faut-il le rappeler, traduit l'engagement et la volonté politique des autorités du continent africain de mettre un terme au travail des enfants et ses pires formes, et ce, conformément à l'agenda 2063 de l'Union africaine et à la cible 8.7 des objectifs de développement durable ODD. Cet engagement au plus haut niveau est nécessaire pour créer une synergie d'action entre l'ensemble des acteurs, à savoir les décideurs politiques, les administrations du travail, les partenaires sociaux, les organisations de la société civile et les partenaires internationaux. chers participants, mesdames et messieurs, il ne fait l'ombre d'aucun doute que le temps est désormais à l'action. C'est pourquoi j'ai la ferme conviction que cette synergie d'action entre les différents acteurs permettra à nos États individuellement, mais également collectivement, de prendre sans délai des mesures appropriées pour réaliser les objectifs et les cibles du plan d'action visant l'éradication des piliformes de travail des enfants sur le continent. Mon pays, quant à lui, s'est inscrit dans cette dynamique depuis des décennies à travers notamment la création d'une direction technique chargée de la question. La dernière action forte dans mon pays en date reste l'adoption en 2019, avec l'implication des partenaires sociaux et des organisations de la société civile, conformément donc au principe du bipartisme cher au BIT, d'une nouvelle stratégie nationale 2019-2023 de lutte contre les piliformes du travail des enfants, dont la vision est, je cite, de faire du Burkina Faso à l'horizon 2023 une nation qui assure le plein épanouissement et le développement harmonieux de l'enfant. Fin de citation. Mesdames et messieurs, le lancement de l'année internationale pour l'élimination du travail des enfants en Afrique m'offre donc l'occasion de réitérer l'engagement du comité technique spécialisé de l'Union africaine sur le développement social, le travail et l'emploi à œuvrer aux côtés de toutes les parties prenantes, et je demeure convaincu que notre action conjuguée permettra l'atteinte des objectifs de l'agenda 2063 et la cible 8.7 des 12 . C'est sur cette note d'espoir que je renouvelle mes sincères remerciements à l'ensemble de nos partenaires pour leur permanent et précieux accompagnement dans la lutte contre le travail des enfants dans ces piliformes. Je vous remercie.
It's a massive thank you to Your Excellency, of course, linking again the importance of not only looking at our target of 2025, but looking at how this enables us to meet our dreams of the Africa we want that we have articulated in Agenda 2063. Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Before I call on my next speaker, ladies and gentlemen, for those of you who are asking about the interpretation, again, please just look to the bottom of your screen. There is an icon that looks like a globe. It says interpretation. From there, you will be able to choose to follow this conversation and these proceedings in Arabic, in French, in Portuguese, and in English. The interpreters are doing a fantastic job. I've just been listening in on English, so I know that they're there. So please make use of that interpretation service. Now, ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to introduce the ILO Assistant Director General, our Regional Director for Africa. She's going to be sharing her opening words now for this International Year for the Elimination of Child Labour. It's my pleasure to hand over the floor to Madame Cynthia Samuel Olojuwon to please take the floor and give us her opening words. Madame, it's over to you.
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator, Nozi Shabalala. Madam Commissioner, distinguished guests, STC Chair, on the behalf of the International Labour Organization, I welcome you all to the African launch of the International Year for the Elimination of Child Labour. A very warm welcome to the hundreds of people who are following the event online. With 1 in 5 African children in child labour, the situation in the continent prior to the COVID-19 pandemic was already a very strong concern. COVID-19 will inevitably result in a rise in poverty and therefore lead to an increase in the vulnerability to child labour as households use every available means to survive. This is why we must, and I emphasize, we must make 2021 a special year of action. We're only 4 years away from 2025, the year that the international community has defined for all nations to achieve the full elimination of child labor. If all our member states, our social partners, our institutions, and all our development partners commit and act with the needed urgency towards concrete progress on an annual basis, I have no doubt whatsoever that we will achieve this very ambitious goal. In this regard, we ask not only that you take the required action, we ask you to please inspire others to take necessary action. Today's event is a demonstration of the existing political will and commitment to end child labor in Africa. The conversation we will have today is unprecedented. It brings together all the key stakeholders involved in ending child labor in Africa. We know the problem. We know that with the extensive experience and expertise of the ILO, all those things that work are known. And we also know what doesn't work. Hence, now is the time for us to act. Now is the time for us to scale up and multiply those achievements that we have reached through our projects and pilot interventions. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, my expectation is that today we will commit. Today we will pledge. Today we will discuss concrete actions that will be taken. We know that child labor is a complex problem. However, the ILO has demonstrated that it can be addressed through a holistic approach that focuses on prevention. This approach aims at providing access to quality education for all, access to social protection, access to decent work for adults, expansion of basic service coverage and awareness raising. It also includes transforming the informal economy and paying particular attention to the specific vulnerabilities of children affected by crisis, by climate change, and by precarious migration. Children have the right to be free from child labor. Governments and all organizations represented should allocate the necessary budgets to implement these key policy priorities. This should not be seen as a cost. This is an investment. It is an investment in creating a better future for all. By eliminating child labor, we build a healthier, better educated, and more productive workforce that will contribute to sustainable economic growth and development. And we'll do this in a way that leaves no one behind. Finally, as the ILO Regional Director for Africa, I commit the ILO to support these efforts in the continent in line with the ILO conventions, the 2019 Abidjan Declaration on the Future of Work for Africa, and the AU 10-year action plan on child labor. I also commit that the ILO will facilitate partnerships with the African Union and other partners to support continental, sub-regional, and national concrete work to end child labor in Africa. Thank you very much for your attention.
Madam Samuel Olwondron, as always, really succinct, but very, very insightful. Thank you very much for your contribution, Madam. Your emphasis on prevention, and I'm sure this is going to be one of the things we're going to be hearing in the conversation today. We're also taking away from your message the call to action to not only commit, not only pledge, but to inspire others to do the same, because it's going to take coordinated action from every single stakeholder to really end child labor in all its forms by 2025. I'd like to also just give a special shout out to Fatou Janye. She's a human trafficking survivor. She's just said hi to us on the chat from the Gambia, and it's so lovely that we have human trafficking and child labor survivors that are joining us from all over the world. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we go now to our third speaker for this opening session. It is my absolute pleasure to introduce to you the African Union Commissioner for Health, Humanitarian Affairs and Social Development, Her Excellency Amira Al-Fadil, who will at this point also share with us her opening words. Your Excellency, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon. I think my video is muted from your side.
Yes, thank you so much, Your Excellency. I'm going to ask our technical team to please assist so that we can see our commissioner, please.
While you are unmuting my video, I will start by greeting the Honorable Minister of Public Service, Labor and Social Protection of Burkina Faso, our Chair of the African Union Specialized Technical Committee on Social Development, Labor and Employment, His Excellency Sini Mohamedou. And also I would like to welcome my sister, ILO Assistant Director General, the Regional Director for Africa, my sister Cynthia Samuel. Cynthia, welcome, and always good to see you. I welcome the Excellencies, the commissioners who joined us, Commissioner Sarah Agbor, welcome to this very important event. I would like also to welcome our honorable ministers from African member states, our members of the parliament, honorable members of the parliament, welcome. I welcome also our experts from the Child Rights Committee who joined us. I welcome also the representatives of the regional economic communities and our social partners. I welcome UNICEF and other international partners. I welcome our organizations, child activists. Welcome to this session. Finally, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Assalamu alaikum. And it's my singular pleasure and privilege to represent His Excellency, the Chairperson of the African Union Commission, His Excellency Musa Faki Mohammed. And I would like to thank you all for organizing to have this launch of the International Year for the Elimination of Child Labour to be here in Africa. Thank you. And also to accelerate the implementation of the African Union 10-year action plan on eradication of child labor, forced labor, human trafficking, and modern slavery in Africa, which is 2020 to 2030. This is a very important plan of action. I would like to call upon our member states at the opening of my remarks, please give it the utmost attention needed. It's a very important document and the legal instrument that we need to use in Africa and to have our national plans to be aligned to it. The launch also coincides with the AU annual theme, and the theme of this year is on arts, culture, and heritage as levers for the Africa we want. I believe that this is a good coincidence. It provides an opportunity for all of us to reflect on worst forms of violation of the rights of children against the African culture anchored on our Ubuntu philosophy. Protection of vulnerable populations such as children is a cardinal principle which we should uphold at all material times. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I would like also to seize this moment to express my sincere gratitude to ILO, especially the regional office, and to the liaison office in Addis Ababa for the progressive, dynamic, and solid partnership, cooperation, and collaboration that AU continues to enjoy with all of them. I also wish to extend my gratitude to all partners who are contributing to the protection and welfare of the child. Most of them are represented here in this online meeting. Fellow Africans and members of the global community, I also dare to say, unless we eradicate degrading and humiliating behavior of adult persons to subject children to forced labor, we will not achieve our continental and global development goals. At the heart of the development agenda frameworks articulated in the SDGs and in Agenda 2063, an urgent call for action by all countries. Today, we are gathered here to amplify the call on the eradication for child labor in Africa. Our AU Charter on the Rights and Welfare of the Child and the UN Convention on the Rights of the Children, CRC, upon which the 10-year plan is anchored, recognize the child rights to be protected from economic exploitation and from performing any work that is likely to be hazardous or interfere with the child's education, or to be harmful to the child's health or physical or mental health, spiritual, moral, or social development. The AU 10-year plan is implemented in just a box with the ILO Convention 182, and an instrument that emphasizes the subset of worst forms of child labor requiring immediate action, while listing other forms of slavery or practices similar to slavery, the use, procuring, or offering of a child for prostitution, for the production of pornography or for pornographic performances, and for the use, procurement, or offering of a child for illicit activities, in particular for the production and trafficking of drugs as defined in relevant international treaties. And let me here stop and say that we as an African Union, as a responsible department, we have started 2 years ago our project on the on fighting online child sexual exploitation. It's a very important project. We are doing it with our partners, and this is something that I would like to mention and share with you. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to challenge you. If we keep quiet and continue to reiterate rhetoric about child labor, change will never come. We should remember that child labor is deeply rooted in poverty and socioeconomic vulnerabilities, lack of decent work opportunities, inadequacy of social safety nets, informally poor access to social services, including education, as well as social norms. All this has been exacerbated by the COVID-19 situation we are facing now and we are challenging now. Research also has shown us that at this exception period induced by COVID-19, children risk being pushed into child labor. It is against this background that the African Union adopted the 10-year action plan for the elimination of child labor, forced labor, modern slavery, and human trafficking. The plan elaborates a framework for mobilizing African Union institutions, our member states, regional economic communities, and other partners on the continent to scale up efforts and accelerate progress toward the achievement of the AU Agenda 2063 and the target 8.7 of the SDGs. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, before I conclude, I would like to take this opportunity to commend the government and the peoples of South Africa for taking a positive step to host the 5th Global Conference on Child Labor that will take place in South Africa in 2022. And I hope by that time we will be ending our fight with COVID-19. This is the first time that such a conference will be held in Africa, where stakeholders will share experiences and make additional commitments towards ending child labor in all its forms by 2025, and forced labor, human trafficking, and modern slavery by 2030. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it is now in our hands to change the lives of our children in Africa, those who are trapped in the gagwir of child labor. I therefore urge all of you to take solid actions to end child labor wherever you are by 2025. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for having this event launched in Africa, and I wish you a fruitful deliberations throughout this event. Thank you, and back to you.
Your Excellency Al-Fadil, thank you very much for your contribution, of course, highlighting here the importance of engaging with the socio-economic realities on the African continent, engaging with the social norms that give rise to some of the practices that we are seeing. And of course, you've also raised the very important and increasingly emergent practice of online sexual exploitation of children. Your call to action is clear. If we keep quiet, there will be no change. Thank you very much for that contribution. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we have heard from our high-level speakers. Perhaps at this point, we might hear from a child labor survivor who's here to really remind us about the importance of the conversation that we're having here. It's my pleasure now to introduce to you Ms. Dibu Faye, who was for many years the leader of the African Working Children's Movement and participated in a conference in Oslo that was organized by the ILO in preparation for the adoption of Convention 182, which we know is really focused on the worst forms of child labor. And so she is here with us to really share some of her own personal experience. Today, Dibu lives and she works in Paris, but despite where her career is today, she's still very much in touch and connected to her origins. And so she'll be using that unique experience to really add her voice to the change that we're all calling for. Dibu, it's lovely to have you. Hello and welcome. So Dibu, I can see you on my screen. If you can unmute your microphone and put your camera on, there you are. So beautiful smile, lovely to see you. So let's have you unmute your microphone, please, Dibu. And when you unmute, I'm going to put a question to you. And the question is this: as a child, you worked as a domestic worker in Senegal. Could you just tell us a little bit about your experience, please?
Oui, merci beaucoup de m'avoir donné la parole. Mesdames, Messieurs, c'est un honneur pour moi de prendre la parole aujourd'hui parce que mon expérience est liée au travail des enfants. En effet, lorsque j'ai quitté mon village pour aller travailler en ville, je n'avais que 7 ans. Je gardais des enfants alors que moi-même j'étais un enfant. Un peu plus tard, j'ai travaillé dans plusieurs maisons comme domestique. Je travaillais toute la journée, 7 jours sur 7, pour gagner un salaire très bas. Loin de ma famille, privée de mes enfants, loin de ma famille, privée de mes droits en tant qu'enfant, car la vie que je menais était une vie d'adulte. Je vivais dans un quartier où résidaient plusieurs enfants qui avaient la même situation que moi.
Dibu, it's such a fantastic story that you have kicked us off with, and thank you for sharing with us. But those numbers are really staggering. You know, working 24 hours a day, 365 days in the year, that really speaks to the core of what we're talking about today. Perhaps one more question, Dibu, and the question is, what was the turning point in your life that helped you to get to where you are today?
Lorsque j'ai compris que le travail que j'effectuais me maintenait dans la pauvreté, j'ai commencé à chercher d'autres possibilités. Ma situation a commencé à changer lorsque je suis devenue membre du mouvement africain des enfants et jeunes travailleurs. L'ONG Enda Jeunesse Action qui accompagne ce mouvement intervenait dans mon quartier. Je participais aux réunions et à toutes les activités. Cela m'a permis de devenir le délégué de mon quartier, délégué national, ensuite délégué régional du mouvement. Le but de ce mouvement était de lutter contre l'exploitation des enfants au travail, mauvaises conditions de travail des enfants. Moi et les autres délégués avons mené des actions sur le terrain dans le but d'améliorer la position des enfants au travail et leur position dans la société. Nous avions effectué également des sensibilisations auprès des employeurs sur le droit des enfants. Nous avions mis un système en place qui nous permettait d'accéder à des soins de santé, mais également des cours d'alphabétisation. J'ai eu l'opportunité de participer dans de nombreuses conférences au niveau international sur la question du travail des enfants, notamment la conférence sur les pires formes du travail des enfants organisée par BIT, Convention 182 à Oslo en 1997. J'ai appris à lire et à écrire pendant nos programmes dans mon quartier. Comme la plupart des enfants qui travaillent, je ne suis jamais allée à l'école parce qu'un autre projet comme le mariage était considéré plus valorisant que l'école. À l'âge de 13 ans, un mari m'avait été choisi. Après un long combat, un mariage défait, j'ai passé mon adolescence à travailler le jour et à faire des études le soir. Une société, prendre le chemin de l'école, c'est mieux que prendre le chemin du travail. Des enfants sans éducation signifie une société sans évolution. Le travail des enfants détruit des rêves, étouffe des talents, augmente la pauvreté. Nous les adultes, qui que nous soyons, quelles que soient les fonctions que nous occupons, nous sommes responsables de tous les enfants. Agir sur le terrain de manière adaptée permet de changer, je suis convaincue, la situation de nombreux enfants pour qu'ils puissent avoir un meilleur avenir demain.
Tibu, thank you very much for the generosity of your story. Thank you very much for sharing that with us. You have spoken and re-emphasized some of the points that we heard. Her Excellency Al Fadil spoke about focusing on socioeconomic realities like poverty. You've spoken about the need for organization, the need for the formation of movements, the need for systemic change, the need to focus on education and on literacy. And I do not doubt that some of the actions and the commitments and the pledges we're going to be hearing today are going to flow exactly from what you have just shared with us. Thank you very much for sharing that with us and making yourself available. Now, ladies and gentlemen, as we prepare to engage with the African Union 10-year action plan on child labor, forced labor, modern slavery and human trafficking, which really was the beginning of what we heard in our initial message today. It is the core and the foundation of the conversation that we're going to be having today. I'd also like to just re-emphasize the point that was made that 2021 is also the African Union Year of Arts, Culture and Heritage. And so maybe it's just fitting for all of us right now to take a moment and enjoy a song by Kids United, which is called Take a Stand, and is really, really an emphasis on the kind of action that we need to be focusing on here today. It's a short song. Please enjoy. I'll see you on the other side.
Je travaille toute la journée, mais même me font mal. Je suis fatiguée.
The back is aching from a long day's work. There is so much that she must clean, and her employers say no kind words. So today she turns 13. He has a story that millions of children share. We must come together, but there's no time to spare. Now is the time to unite. Take a stand for children's rights, to dream, to learn, to play, to grow in safety day by day. We all must do our part to give these lives a brand new start. On us the futures depend, and child labor to end. No, it's time to take a stand. His lungs are burning from the dust he breathes, in tunnels deep beneath the ground. He doesn't always get the food he needs, but it's the only bed he's found. He has a story that millions of children share. We must come together, for there's no time to spare. Now is the time to unite. Take a stand for children's rights, to dream, to learn, to play, to grow in safety day by day. We all must do our part to give these lives a brand new start. On us the futures depend, when child labor to an end, to an end. It's on the golden womb when it should be in school. We must support each family and crazy sin and certainty. 152 million, that's so many children working hard, no golden one when each of them should be in school. Provide for those in poverty, make school accessible and free. Now is the time to unite, take a stand for children's rights, to dream, to learn, to play, to grow in safety day by day. We all must do our part to give these lives a brand new start. Honor the future, step back, bring child labor to an end. It's time to take a stand.
It's a very big thank you to Kids United for reminding us that the power of music can really pull us all together. It can be the igniter for new conversations and for new behaviors. And that was really, really fantastic. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I promised you that we would have an opportunity to really engage with the African Union 10-year action plan on child labor, forced labor, human trafficking, and modern slavery. And so in this session, we're going to use the session as an opportunity to have a conversation about the implementation of the action plan, implementation at the continental level, at the regional, the sub-regional, and of course at the national level. We're going to start off with a sharing of a presentation by the Director for Health, Humanitarian Affairs and Social Development African Union at the African Union Commission. It's my pleasure to hand over to Madame Maria Masise, who's really going to take us through a high-level presentation of the plan so that as we continue to have conversations today, we are all aligned on what the constituent parts of the plan are. Madame Sise, I'm handing the floor over to you.
Thank you so much, moderator. I would like to ask the technician if I can share my presentation. The presentation is in English, but I'm going to speak in French. So, Excellences, Mesdames et Messieurs les ministres, Excellences, Mesdames et Messieurs les ambassadeurs, Excellences, Madame la commissaire, Madame Cynthia Samuel, directrice régionale du BIT, Mesdames et Messieurs les représentants des agences des Nations Unies, Mesdames et Messieurs les représentants des organisations de la société civile et des organisations internationales, distingués invités, j'ai l'honneur et le plaisir de vous présenter le résumé du contenu du plan d'action continental de l'Union africaine contre le travail des enfants. Mais avant de commencer, next please. Mais avant de commencer, permettez-moi de vous présenter l'historique de ce plan. La commissaire de l'Union africaine en charge des affaires sociales, maintenant devenue département en charge de la santé, des affaires humanitaires et du développement social, Madame Amira El Fadil Mohamed, à qui je rends un vibrant hommage pour toutes les réalisations et les actions qu'elle a entreprises pendant son mandat à la tête du département. À sa prise de fonction en 2017, demandé à ce qu'un projet de plan d'action contre le travail des enfants soit préparé et soumis au CTS Travail, Emploi, Développement Social pour son adoption. Donc, le CTS, c'est la réunion des ministres en charge du travail, de l'emploi et du développement social. Le projet de plan d'action a été développé avec le soutien du BIT, que je remercie énormément. Et ce projet donc, a été soumis au CTS en avril 2019 et qui a fait d'importantes contributions. Et le projet amendé par la réunion du CTS a été resoumis au CTS en décembre 2019, qu'il a adopté et soumis au Conseil exécutif tenu en février 2020 et qu'il a adopté. Je voudrais profiter de cette occasion pour remercier tous les collègues de l'Union africaine et du BIT qui ont travaillé dans l'élaboration de ce plan d'action. Donc, le plan d'action a été élaboré donc, pour tenir compte du phénomène du travail des enfants. Comme vous le voyez, les chiffres sur l'écran, nous avons 152 millions d'enfants qui travaillent dans le monde Et comme vous le voyez aussi, l'Afrique à elle seule comptabilise 72 millions d'enfants qui travaillent. Et c'est à cet effet donc que Madame la commissaire a jugé utile d'avoir un plan d'action continental africain pour combattre le phénomène du travail des enfants. Et maintenant, pour revenir au contenu du plan d'action qui porte sur la période 2020-2030, il comprend 10 domaines d'intervention clés. Le premier domaine d'intervention porte sur l'engagement de l'Union africaine, des communautés économiques régionales et d'autres structures concernées pour faire du plaidoyer, de la formulation des politiques et du suivi des politiques. Le deuxième domaine d'intervention porte sur le renforcement des capacités pour une mise en œuvre effective des politiques. Et le troisième domaine d'intervention porte sur la législation et l'application des lois. Le quatrième domaine porte sur l'éducation et la formation. Le cinquième domaine d'intervention porte sur des campagnes de sensibilisation sur le travail des enfants, le trafic d'êtres humains et l'esclavage moderne. Le sixième domaine porte sur la prise en compte du travail des enfants, le trafic d'êtres humains et l'esclavage moderne dans les secteurs prioritaires. Le septième domaine sur trouver les moyens d'aborder et de régler le phénomène dans les zones de conflit et les situations d'urgence. Ensuite, il y a le domaine d'intervention relatif au partenariat et des interventions multisectorales. Nous avons également le domaine relatif aux statistiques et la gestion des connaissances. Et enfin, le domaine relatif à la mobilisation des ressources. Next, please. Next. OK, donc la deuxième partie de ce plan porte sur la présentation du plan de mise en œuvre. La mise en œuvre de ce plan se fera à 3 niveaux. Au niveau d'abord continental, nous avons le plan prévoit la nomination d'un rapporteur spécial sur le travail des enfants qui aura un mandat précis dans la mise en œuvre du plan. Nous avons ensuite la prise en compte des priorités du plan d'action dans la mise en œuvre des autres politiques de l'IA, notamment les politiques de l'agriculture, des mines et du commerce. La mise en œuvre prévoit aussi un soutien technique et stratégique en planification, mise en œuvre et suivi, évaluation aux États membres et au CER. Il est également prévu des partages d'expériences, de renforcement de capacités et d'apprentissage, et des campagnes de plaidoyer, la mobilisation des ressources et le partenariat, le suivi, évaluation, ainsi que la présentation de rapports aux organes de l'IA comme le CTS, le Conseil exécutif et l'Assemblée. Le deuxième niveau se fera au niveau des communautés économiques régionales, donc les CER. Il est prévu à ce niveau la domestication du plan d'action dans les politiques régionales, le suivi et l'évaluation, la mobilisation des ressources et le partenariat. En fait, le dernier niveau de mise en œuvre se fera au plan national et comprend notamment la mise en œuvre du plan d'action donc relatif aux priorités nationales, l'identification des éléments du plan d'action à mettre en œuvre au plan national, la mobilisation des ressources au niveau national, le suivi et l'évaluation, le partenariat au niveau national. Et pour conclure cette présentation, nous allons vous présenter les prochaines étapes. Donc, la première importante étape, c'est de pousser le plaidoyer à l'égard des États membres, des CER et des partenaires pour la mise en œuvre de ce plan, d'engager les autres organes de l'Union africaine, notamment le Parlement panafricain, le Comité africain sur les droits et le bien-être de l'enfant, la Cour africaine des droits de l'homme, la Commission africaine des droits de l'homme et tous les organes pour leur implication dans la mise en œuvre de ce plan. Nous allons aussi accélérer la procédure de nomination du rapporteur spécial sur le travail des enfants et l'élaboration d'un plan de mise en œuvre et bâtir un partenariat sur la question de mobilisation des ressources également et l'élaboration des statistiques, des rapports sur le travail des enfants. Excellences, Mesdames et Messieurs, voilà succinctement présenté le contenu du plan d'action de l'Union africaine contre le travail des enfants. Je vous remercie.
Madame Cisse, thank you very much for a very succinct overview, and you've done a fantastic job of really showing us the key strategic intervention areas, but also speaking about those 3 levels of implementation: the continental, the regional, and the country level, and of course the next steps, which become exceptionally important. At this point now, we're really going to hear from some of the continental, regional, and national players in terms of implementation, as I have promised. And so it's my honor right now to welcome the acting president of the Pan-African Parliament, who really wanted to join us in person at this very, very important event. The Honorable Chief Charumbira is joining us today, and we know that the Honorable has been a very, very active advocate for the protection of children whose vulnerability we know has further increased because of the COVID-19 pandemic. And so to yourself, Honorable Chief Charumbira, the question I'd like to put to you is, how is the Pan-African Parliament contributing to the implementation of the African Union's 10-year plan of action? How's the Parliament contributing?
Thank you, Moderator Nozi. And I should say, I'm very excited in terms of your capacity. I've been seeing you managing this process very well. Before I get into my speech, may I recognize all the dignitaries, esteemed presenters. I've seen it's a long list of presenters, which is very good, shows good interest in the speakers. And I've been given 3 minutes, so I would rather move quickly. I'm aware that the commissioner, I saw her face, and I think I would just, for that one, I would say, commissioner from the African Union, I think for education and I think for social affairs, I've seen them. So all commissioners are saluted. The ILO regional, I can't say regional, but I think there's some high dignitaries here. Anyway, thank you, Madam Moderator. As it has been mentioned, we are all bound, and I tried my best to comply, which is 3 minutes. I hope I'll make it. Today is a memorable day. A day we step all as one, solemnly, for a better protection of our children from the scourges called child violence, labor exploitation, that is child labor exploitation, human trafficking. This is to give them a better tomorrow. We want to give the children a better tomorrow, and therefore give them a better future. It has been said, but I'll repeat it so that it stays in our minds while we take our commitments further today. Out of the 152 million children are victims of child labor worldwide. Africa is the most affected region, with approximately 7.1 million African children estimated to be victims of child labor. That is 72.1 million. 22.1 million is more than the whole population of a country, even like South Africa. We have made efforts, noble steps, as you surely heard about it before me, that there's more to do to get to the Africa we want. At the Pan-African Parliament, that's being we have done as a parliament. the Pan-African Parliament, we have been especially concerned since July 2019, after a bitter assessment during a fact-finding mission in Côte d'Ivoire, where we met with children working in mines, in minefield, as well as local authorities. So it's important to note that Pan-African Parliament, in fact, sent a fact-finding mission to Côte d'Ivoire in July 2019 to investigate issues of child labor. We also hosted in March 2020, as part of a preliminary work to gather, that gathers today, a very rich workshop on online child protection. This was to support the fight to end all forms of child violence, labor exploitation, human trafficking by 2023. As Pan-African parliamentarians, one of our key roles is to promote, disseminate all the instruments that will help us fulfill Agenda 2063. In the present case, I notably refer to the African Charter on Human and People's Rights and the African Charter on the Rights and Welfare of the Child. We also ought to monitor, both at continental and national level, the implementation of these texts, their domestication in national legislations and policies. As Pan-African Parliament, we've pushed a lot on this one, that we've pushed a lot through our representative MPs from national parliaments to ensure that they move motions at national level to ensure that the spirit in the African Charter on Human and People's Rights and in the African Charter on the Rights of and Welfare of the Child, these are domesticated and become part of the national laws. As Pan-African Parliament, we wish to assure you and reassure you, as we launch the year of elimination of child labor today, that we commit fully our support and our capacities to this endeavor, to raise awareness and highlight good practices, improvement in the opportunities during the gathering. With the support of our partners, we will continue to reinforce MPs' capacities to optimize oversight results. At national level, we'll join the AU Commission's efforts in the various programs and give our support through the AU Special Rapporteur on Child Labor, Forced Labor, Human Trafficking and Modern Slavery. The Pan-African Parliament will ensure that national laws and regulations relating to child labor, forced labor and human trafficking and the different forms of modern slavery are properly aligned in order to ensure that we close all the loopholes that exist with legislation at various international and national levels. I thank you.
Honorable Charumbira, thank you. You did fantastically well on your 3 minutes. You certainly have started us off on a good note. But thank you very much for speaking about the importance of translating continental legislation into the domestic environment. You spoke quite passionately about monitoring and evaluation as well, but also about making sure that we are looking for the best practices so that as we build capacity, we're building capacity on best practice. On your last point, Honorable, you spoke about supporting the work of the various African Union commissioners. And so it's my pleasure now, ladies and gentlemen, to acknowledge the fact, of course, that child labor is a complex problem. We heard that from the regional director. And because it's a complex problem, it cannot be taken on in isolation. And so what we're going to be hearing now is a short message that comes from African Union commissioners who are committing to contributing their efforts to end child labor in Africa. Here's a short video from our commissioners, and we'll continue from there. Please do enjoy.
Good day. This is my message on the launch of the International Year for the Elimination of Child Labour in Africa. The African Union policies make schools the natural place for children to grow and become active, productive members of the continental socio-economic development in member states. Child labor is a great obstacle to the achievement of the objective of universal education. 30% of child laborers are out of school and 70% are combining school with work. It is crucial that the African Union Assembly of Heads of States and Government adopted in January 2020 the 10-year action plan on child labor eradication, forced labor, human trafficking, and modern slavery 2020-2030, combining the African Union Agenda 2063 with the United Nations Agenda 2030. The plan of action recognizes the decisive strategy of withdrawing children from work and bringing them back to school. It is my pledge that the Commission will engage the African Union Specialized Technical Committee on Education, TVET, to make children labor eradication as a policy concern and put it in its agenda. We must make child labor eradication as a policy concern. We must walk the talk and go beyond rhetorics. The future can only be consolidated when the child is protected. Thank you.
Child labor continues to be prevalent in agriculture in Africa with 85% of incidents. The cause accounts largely for Africa lagging behind the other region of the world on child labor eradication. It is crucial that African Union Assembly Head of States and Government adopted in January 2020 the 10 years action plan on child labor eradication, forced labor, human trafficking, and modern slavery 2020-2030, combining the African Union Agenda 2063 with the UN Agenda 2030. The Department of Agriculture, Rural Development, Blue Economy, and Sustainable Environment participated in the development of the plan of action, which recognizes the central role of the decision makers in agriculture at all levels. It is my pledge that the Commission will engage the African Union Specialized Technical Committee on Agriculture, Rural Development, Water and Environment to make child labor eradication as a policy concern and put it in its agenda. I thank you.
Greetings. Parts of the continent are to be found children working in various socio-economic activities such as mining, unpaid household work, as well as informal trade. Child labor is also present in industry, though at a limited scale. Against the background of a growing child labor phenomenon in African economies, it has been a milestone that the African Union Assembly of Heads of State and Government adopted in January 2020 the 10-year action plan on child labor and eradication, forced labor, human trafficking, and modern day slavery for the period 2020 to 2030. This landmark action plan addresses the strategies of both the goals of Agenda 2063 and the African Union and the United Nations Agenda 2030. The Department of Economic Development, Trade and Industry, and Mining will submit to policy proposals to the African Union Specialized Technical Committee of Ministers of Trade, Industry, and Mining to make the eradication of child labor a policy position. The African want will be realized if we program economic development, tourism, trade, industry, and mining on the basis of them being untainted with child labor practices, human trafficking, and child prostitution, among other forms of human-day slavery. Thank you.
It's a very big thank you to our commissioners, again highlighting the importance of a coordinated response and coordinated action amongst our various institutions at all levels, from continental, regional, and national, again speaking to the complexity of the problem that is child labor. Ladies and gentlemen, we're staying at the continental level. We're now going to hear a contribution from the African Committee on the Rights and Welfare of the Child. I noted that in our Q&A box, there was one of our audience members already asking, where is this committee? So they are right here. And we are about to hear from the Honorable Ava Gava, who is a member of the African Committee of Experts on the Rights and Welfare of the Child and thematic repertoire on violence against children. And so at this point, I probably want to ask a question to you, Honorable Gava, and the question is, what is the role of the committee in ending efforts to end child labor? Over to you, please, the Honorable. Honorable Gava, if you ask, there you are.
Yes, I'm okay, yes. Thank you very much, Madam Moderator. On behalf of the African Committee of Experts on the Rights and Welfare of the Child, I bring felicitations and respect to the representatives of the AU organs, of the regional economic committees and of member states, CSOs, private sector, and the media. It is an honor for me to be called upon as the thematic rapporteur on violence against children to represent the committee on this momentous occasion. And to go straight to the point, I would say that the committee acknowledges the high prevalence of child labor in Africa, and that the prevalence has continued despite interventions and awareness created around the subject matter, with reports indicating that in 2016, Africa had the largest number of child laborers among the world regions. And so the committee would like to take this opportunity to highlight its commitment. Notably, the African Charter on the Rights and Welfare of the Child provides for the protection of children from all forms of economic exploitation and performing work that is hazardous to their development. To this end, the Charter places an obligation on member states to take legislative and administrative measures for the protection of children from child labor. And these measures must include, among other things, adopting the universal minimum age for admission to employment, all kinds of employment for children. And there must be provision within the legislative mechanism for appropriate regulation of hours and time. And there must be provision for penalties and sanctions against perpetrators. A brief look into what the committee, the implementation of the charter. And so through the state party reporting mechanism, the committee has over time engaged with states on the basis of reports presented. And it's notably, it must be noted that the very critical clusters in the reporting mechanism are around issues of child labor, child trafficking, slavery. And the committee has engaged over time with state parties on these matters. And so this now becomes an opportunity for the committee to evoke the mandate under the state party considering mechanism to push forward the agenda of the action plan. Additionally, the committee receives and considers communications from state parties or against state parties on alleged violations of the charter. And notably, the committee recently considered and concluded a case against government of Mauritania, which had aspects of child slavery. And the committee made recommendations on steps that must be taken to get rid or to do away with these practices. And again, the committee considers investigations within the matters falling within the ambit of what the Charter provides for the ultimate protection of children. And so for the committee, it's an opportunity, and the commitment is hereby made that this agenda provides an opportunity for the committee to conduct a continental study on child labor in order to collect data on issues related to child labor and to a better policy formulation, both at regional and national levels. And this will be exhaustively engaged.
Ladies and gentlemen, we do apologize. It seems as if we might have lost the Honorable Avagava, I think as a result of connectivity. But I think what we did here is a really powerful message around taking into cognizance the fact that we really now need to move to more towards data-driven policy. And so the continental study that the committee is endorsing and will be implementing is going to come at a much needed time so that we really have a good understanding of the size and the nature of the problem that we are taking on. And of course, the Honorable spoke about investigations that need to be followed up by penalties. Madam Cynthia spoke a bit earlier on about preventative measures. What we're hearing here as well is that in the absence or in the failure of preventing child labor in all its forms, we must have the muscle to rectify the situation. And so with that, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to go to ECOWAS next, because we know that this is a regional economic community that continues to enable regional cooperation, continues to enable the mobilization of financial and technical support, continues to support the implementation of laws and policies to end child labor. And so it's my absolute pleasure now that we are joined by the program officer in the Social Affairs Department at ECOWAS, Madame Olenhumnu. And so the question to you, Madame Abimbola Olenyumi, is this: how is ECOWAS contributing to the implementation of the AU Action Plan? If you could share that with us, the floor, Madame, is yours.
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator. My name is Abimbola Oyelonu, and I work with the ECOWAS Commission based in Abuja, Nigeria. I'd like to stand on existing protocols, please. I bring you very warm greetings from the President of the ECOWAS Commission, His Excellency, Mr. Jean-Claude Cassibrou, as well as the Commissioner for Social Affairs and Gender, Dr. Siga Fatimata Jang. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, to answer the question before me, the issue of child labor is considered as a regional priority within the West African space. A lot was said earlier on about data. In terms of the regional distribution, ECOWAS bears a huge burden of child laborers. So because of this, we are quite mindful of the need to do something to address the problem and to address it urgently and in an impactful manner. Our struggle against child labor began as far back as 2012, when the initial regional action plan on child labor was adopted. Now that plan of action expired in 2015, and we are currently in the process of developing a new regional action plan. This, of course, is with the support of the ILO. Now, this new regional action plan that is being developed clearly aligns with the AU plan of action. I listened to Madam Commissioner earlier on, and it's quite obvious that what we are thinking of developing fits in quite squarely with the AU plan of action. In terms of the goal of our own plan, the goal of the ECOWAS plan of action is to eliminate the worst forms of child labor in West Africa by 2025. While working towards the complete eradication of child labor by 2030. Now, to achieve this goal, we have set before us some objectives. Again, these objectives clearly align with the objectives of the AU plan. For example, strengthening legislation and enforcement. Madam Commissioner mentioned this earlier on when she spoke. Another objective of our new regional action plan is to promote capacity building and resource mobilization. We cannot overemphasize the need for adequate capacity to tackle child labor. And we're talking about capacity building across the board, be it for government officials, social partners, law enforcement agents. I mean, the need for capacity building and the reinforcement of capacity is something that we need to keep on talking about. The third objective would be stakeholder engagement and community mobilization. Now, this plan of action is going to be implemented at 2 levels. The regional level, which is the ECOWAS level, and the national level, which involves the 15 member states of ECOWAS. So we have in there put community mobilization because we know that a lot of child labor happens within our communities. We are trying as much as possible through this plan not to leave anyone behind. The next objective is to address child labor in priority sectors and in the context of emergencies. Again, this cannot be overemphasized. COVID has revealed a lot. And the truth of the matter is that the West Africa region is subject to a lot of shocks, not just health pandemics. We have a quite fragile profile. We're subject to a lot of humanitarian challenges which trigger off child labor. The 5th objective of the draft regional action plan is to have interventions and partnerships. Again, strengthening of partnerships is quite important. And then lastly, we intend to strengthen mechanisms at the regional level for advocacy and monitoring. So what I have done is to give you a snapshot or a brief overview of what the new regional action plan for the elimination of child labor looks like. And I have tried in my presentation to say quite unequivocally that it is in coherence with the AU action plan. Now, as I said earlier on, this is just a draft. Hopefully, before the end of the year, it will be presented to child labor experts in the region, as well as social partners for validation and adoption. Now, once we have passed through all the statutory processes in ECOWAS, the plan of action will be ready for implementation. I hope I haven't overshot my 3 minutes. I would like to stop there. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak.
Madam Oyelohunu, I think you hit the 3 minutes on the dot. What a fantastic snapshot that you've given us. And the emphasis, of course, there is the coherence between the continental plan and the interpretation of that plan at a regional level. You shared, the pillars of the regional plan, but perhaps one of those that I'd just like to highlight in the conversation at this point is the importance of community mobilization. And so as you go through your process of drafting and finalizing, this is certainly one of the best practice elements that we should all be listening into and getting our hands on a copy of your plan to see how exactly you intend to do that. Thank you very much for an excellent contribution to the conversation. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we've been engaging now at a continental and at a regional level. It's my pleasure now to shift the conversation to the national level, where we're going to be hearing from some of our member states. I'm going to start off in Côte d'Ivoire, where we're going to be hearing from the Chief of Staff in the Ministry of Employment and Social Protection in Côte d'Ivoire. We're going to be hearing from Mr. Jean-Jacques Kanga. Mr. Kanga, when we think of Côte d'Ivoire, we know that eliminating child labor, especially in cocoa production, has been a very high priority for the government. We've seen legal frameworks coming online. We've seen national systems being developed. We've seen monitoring and evaluation efforts coming online. The question to you now, sir, is how does the government intend to intensify and accelerate progress? Over to you, Mr. Kanga.
Merci, Madame. Monsieur le Président, Mesdames et Messieurs, les efforts du gouvernement ivoirien en matière de lutte contre le travail des enfants dans le secteur agricole se matérialisent d'abord par la volonté politique affirmée du président de la République, son Excellence, M. Alassane Ouattara, qui a fait de cette lutte contre ce phénomène une des priorités de l'action gouvernementale. Aussi, l'a-t-il inscrit au programme de développement. À cela s'ajoute l'implication de tout le gouvernement dans la mise en œuvre de la politique nationale de lutte contre le travail des enfants et la création d'un comité interministériel. L'atteinte des objectifs figure également au premier plan de l'engagement de l'État qui a ratifié en 2003 des conventions pertinentes de l'OIT, notamment les conventions 138 et 182 de l'OIT. Au niveau régional, des accords ont été signés avec le Ghana, le Mali et le Burkina Faso en matière de lutte contre la traite transfrontalière et les pires formes de travail des enfants. Pour faire face à cette problématique, le gouvernement a opté pour des stratégies ciblées. Cet engagement a conduit à la prise de mesures et à l'adoption de politiques assorties de stratégies, dont l'élaboration d'une stratégie pour l'amélioration des revenus des producteurs de cacao, qui s'appuie sur la réforme de la filière café-cacao à travers la mise en place de nouveaux mécanismes de gestion et de régulation qui garantissent un prix minimum aux producteurs. Cette stratégie repose sur la création du Conseil de régulation, de stabilisation et de développement de la filière café-cacao, en abrégé le Conseil du café-cacao. De l'élaboration d'une stratégie de lutte contre le travail des enfants qui s'articule autour de trois principaux piliers, à savoir la prévention du phénomène, la protection des victimes et la poursuite et la répression des auteurs. Dans ce cadre, l'État de Côte d'Ivoire a adopté 3 plans d'action nationaux successifs depuis 2012 d'un coût total de 102,7 milliards de francs CFA. Et enfin, 3, la mise en œuvre du système d'observation et de suivi du travail des enfants, en abrégé SOCCI, qui permet d'avoir une vue globale et analytique de ce phénomène, de développer des stratégies de prévention et de protection durable des enfants en situation de travail ou à risque et de disposer d'une base de connaissances fiable. Mesdames et messieurs, comme vous pouvez le constater, la Côte d'Ivoire s'est résolument engagée à tout mettre en œuvre en vue de l'atteinte de la cible 8.7 des ODD. Notre pays s'associe pleinement donc à toutes les initiatives qui poursuivent ce noble but. Dans cette perspective, il s'est porté comme pays pionnier de l'Alliance 8.7 en 2019 en vue d'œuvrer avec l'ensemble des acteurs internationaux engagés dans cette problématique. Je vous remercie.
Thank you very much to you, Mr. Kanga, for that contribution. And of course, what we are hearing is one of the themes that has been coming up consistently, the translation into the National Development Plan. You spoke about national policies. Interestingly as well, you spoke about cross-border efforts, so to ensure that you are getting into meaningful partnerships with neighboring countries. One of the conversations from our global audience in the form of questions has been, are we funding these efforts adequately? And the number that I heard from you was 1.2 billion CFA. So certainly funding and certainly putting resources and mobilizing resources for these efforts. And of course, monitoring and evaluation retains itself as a key theme in this conversation. Thank you very much for that contribution. I move now, ladies and gentlemen, from Cote d'Ivoire to Ethiopia. Now, Ethiopia is also a pathfinder country of Alliance 8.7. And this, of course, means that this is a country that is committed to going faster, but also going further to end child labor and to pave the way for others. It's been an absolute key strategy to ensure that what this country has done is a key strategy is to ensure that children are in school. And so I'd like to welcome at the stage the Minister of Labor and Social Affairs from Ethiopia, Her Excellency Tesfaye, who is standing by. Your Excellency, the question I'd like to bring to you is, how do Ethiopia's current efforts to promote education and to combat child labor contribute to the implementation of the African Union's 10-year plan of action? Your Excellency, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Moderator Noisy, Excellency Chairperson, Excellency Amira Al-Fadir, AU Commissioner to Social Affairs, Excellency Madam Cynthia Samuel, ILO Regional Director, Honorable Ministers, ladies and gentlemen. It's really indeed a great honor and a privilege for me to participate in the virtual launch of the International Year of Africa for the Elimination of Child Labour. I'm grateful to express my country's readiness to shift our commitment to action towards the achievement of the African Union Agenda 2063. I strongly believe that this meeting will set a proactive tone to the year ahead by sharing of concrete action by all stakeholders to end child labor and to play our role as a pathfinder country of Alliance 8.7 and Continental 10-year action plan. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Ethiopia is the second most populous country in Africa, with estimated population of 109 million and above. Ethiopia is also the fastest growing economy in the region, aiming to reach lower middle income status by 2025. So far, economy experienced a strong, broad-based growth, which brought positive trend in poverty reduction in both urban and rural areas through implementing the homegrown economic reform agenda. In addition, there has been tremendous expansion in access to social services like health, education, water, and sanitation, as well as infrastructure, including roads, railways, telecom, power generation, and so forth. Yet, despite these substantial achievements in expansion of social services, the country faces numerous development challenges in maintaining quality education and health services and lack of food security and climate change. Since Ethiopia joined other UN member states by 2015 to adopt the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, my government has worked tirelessly towards achieving these ambitious goals and targets. These efforts, and especially Ethiopia's initiative to participate as a pathfinder country of Alliance 8.7, have brought us here today. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Alliance 8.7 is a global platform for collaboration between stakeholders at all levels to accelerate efforts to achieve Target 8.7 of the Sustainable Development Goals. Our commitment in this regard is closely interlinked with the ongoing efforts to achieve the objectives and targets of the African Union's Agenda 2063. Ethiopian government has already made significant stride in combating child labor and forced labor across the country. We have ratified the principal UN and ILO conventions. In addition, we have developed the third generation national plan of action for the elimination of the worst forms of child labor as a major component. The third generation national action plan focuses on three main pillars, namely prevention, protection, and rehabilitation and reintegration. Under prevention, we undertake awareness creation and mass mobilization program research and concrete evidence-based support to vulnerable groups, including reduction of vulnerability through direct support in the rural and urban productive safety net program, which is a very big flagship program in the country in terms of social protection scheme. Regarding protection, we strengthen the legal framework to adequately protect children and an institutional capacity building program to combat child labor. And in relation to rehabilitation and reintegration, we focus on enhancing access to regular and technical and vocational training, enhancing decent work for youth, and supporting the rehabilitation and reintegration of victims of child labor. In addition, my government has also established a National Council Against Human Trafficking and Smuggling and a federal task force of countering migrant smuggling and trafficking in person. Moreover, a national plan of action against the trafficking in person and smuggling of migrants has been developed. Despite our achievements and best interventions, we believe that there is still a long way to go. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Ethiopia reaffirms her commitment to the realization of the objectives and targets of the African Union's Agenda 2063. In this regard, my government is committed for the realization of the first 10-year implementation plan from 2030 to 2023 and 10-year action plan on the eradication of child labor, forced labor, modern slavery, and human trafficking in Africa from 2020 to 2030. In conclusion, my government would like to recognize and acknowledge the need to do more as we go through different socioeconomic pressures, especially this time. Individual workers and their families, vulnerable categories of the community, especially children, including refugees and returnees, are facing challenges which limit the option of survival and sustainable livelihood during the time of pandemic that calls for global partnership and coordination, as we have heard from the testimony and have seen from the song. Thus, Ethiopia urges all stakeholders to put hands together to create a better future for the global community. I thank you for your attention.
Your Excellency Tesfaye, thank you very much for your contribution. Your call to action is loud and clear. We need to do more. The third generational national plan of action potentially is also a plan that is worth being studied as you speak about the pillars of prevention, protection, as well as rehabilitation and integration. I certainly hope that others will be looking to best practice within your plan. And also you spoke about a national council and a federal task force, which really speaks to the how much of a priority overcoming this challenge is for Ethiopia. So thank you very much for your contribution, Madam. So ladies and gentlemen, we started off in West Africa with Cote d'Ivoire. We've made our way to Eastern Africa now with Ethiopia. It's my pleasure now to go to Northern Africa as we hear from the Minister of Employment and Vocational Training in Morocco, His Excellency Mohamed Amakraz. And Your Excellency, I'm seeing you on my screen, and as you come onto the screen, allow me to ask this question. When one looks at Morocco and its response to the challenge of children in child labor, we have seen that the government has increased labor inspections, has improved laws, has even increased the judicial response in terms of criminal punishment. The question to you, Your Excellency, is in what ways are all these efforts really supporting the implementation of the African Union's 10-year plan? Your Excellency, the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
شكرا السيدة الرئيسة، السيدة مفوضة الشؤون الاجتماعية بالاتحاد الإفريقي، السيدات والسادة الوزراء، السيدة المديرة الإقليمية لإفريقيا لمنظمة العمل الدولية، السيدات والسادة الحضور. يسرني أن أنضم إلى هذه الفعاليات الإفريقية وأن أهنئ الاتحاد الإفريقي وكافة المنظمين على هذه المبادرة المهمة التي تعكس وعيهم بمعضلة تشغيل الأطفال وبضرورة تعبئة الجهود والوسائل للتصدي لها. كما يشرفني أن أقتسم معكم بهذه المناسبة مجهودات المملكة المغربية في الحد من تشغيل الأطفال، لا سيما بالنظر للتراجع الكبير الذي عرفته الظاهرة إحصائيا. حضرات السيدات والسادة، تشكل محاربة ظاهرة تشغيل الأطفال التشغيل المبكر للأطفال انشغالا حقيقيا تتقاسمه كل مكونات الدولة المغربية، وبنظرة شمولية للموضوع التي تلخصها مضامين الرسالة الملكية بمناسبة الدورة الثامنة لقمة منظمة المدن والحكومات المحلية المتحدة الإفريقية أفريسيتي في 24 نوفمبر 2018 بمراكش، حيث قال جلالته: فيجب أن لا تنحصر جهود حماية الأطفال في الحفاظ على سلامتهم الجسدية والمعنوية والنفسية، بل ينبغي أن تقترن أيضا بتوفير الشروط الكفيلة بالنهوض بأوضاعهم الاقتصادية والاجتماعية والثقافية. فهذا التحدي وإن كان جسيما بحمولته فهو جدير بأن نخوض غماره من أجل كسب الرهانات المرتبطة به. لذا فقد ارتكزت جهود الحكومة بخصوص هذا الموضوع على 4 محاور أساسية. أولا، تقوية الإطار القانوني المتعلق بحماية الطفولة، ويتجلى ذلك في المقتضيات والأحكام التشريعية ذات الصلة، بدءا بدستور المملكة الذي أكد في فصله 32 على ضرورة سعي الدولة لتوفير الحماية القانونية والاعتبار الاجتماعي والمعنوي لجميع الأطفال بكيفية متساوية بصرف النظر عن وضعيتهم العائلية. ووصلت المملكة المغربية انخراطها في المواثيق الدولية والإقليمية ذات الصلة وملائمة تشريعها الوطني مع مختلف اتفاقيات العمل الدولية التي تعنى بحقوق الأطفال، لا سيما الاتفاقية الأممية لحقوق الطفل واتفاقيات العمل الدولية رقم 138 حول سن ولوج العمل، ورقم 182 حول أسوأ أشكال عمل الأطفال، ورقم 189 حول العمل اللائق للعاملات والعمال المنزليين. وعلى مستوى التشريع الوطني فقد أفردت مدونة الشغل مقتضيات حمائية خاصة بحقوق الطفل عبر التنصيص على المنع المطلق لتشغيل الأطفال دون سن 15 سنة، وعلى منع تشغيل من هم دون 18 سنة في الأشغال التي تعيق نموهم وتفوق طاقتهم أو تشكل مخاطر عليهم أو تخل بأخلاقهم. كما يشكل اعتماد المملكة المغربية سنة 2016 للقانون رقم 1912 بتحديد شروط الشغل والتشغيل للعاملات والعمال المنزليين خطوة هامة في حماية حقوق هذه الفئة من العمال، لا سيما الأطفال والنساء، حيث حدد الحد الأدنى لسن التشغيل في المنازل في 18 سنة. ثانيا، تقوية وتجويد آلية المراقبة من خلال تعيين 54 نقطة ارتكاز من بين مفتشي الشغل على صعيد كل جهات المملكة منذ سنة 2009، ونطت بهم مهام مراقبة تطبيق الأحكام التشريعية والتنظيمية المتعلقة بالشغل الخاصة بتشغيل الأطفال، إضافة إلى استفادتهم من تكوينات خاصة حول مقتضيات القانون رقم 19/12 المتعلق بالعمال المنزليين. ثالثا، تعزيز الشراكة مع المجتمع المدني من خلال تخصيص غلاف مالي من ميزانية الدولة منذ 2009 لدعم مشاريع الجمعيات العاملة في مجال محاربة ظاهرة تشغيل الأطفال وحماية حقوق المرأة في العمل عبر التحسيس بحقوقهم وسحب الأطفال القاصرين منهم من مناطق العمل. رابعا، على مستوى برامج التعاون الدولي في إطار تحقيق الهدف 8.7 من أهداف التنمية المستدامة الذي يدعو إلى الحد من جميع أشكال عمل الأطفال في أفق 2025 والقضاء على العمل الجبري وأشكال الرق الحديثة والاتجار بالبشر بحلول سنة 2030. تم اختيار المغرب من طرف التحالف الدولي المعني كبلد رائد في مجال محاربة تشغيل الأطفال، وذلك من أجل الوقوف على الطرق والأساليب والبرامج المبتكرة التي ستمكن البلدان الأخرى من الاستفادة من تجاربه لأكثر من عقدين وممارسته الجيدة وتحقيق أقصى قدر من الفعالية بما يتناسب مع المواعيد الاستعجالية المحددة لإنجاز هذا الهدف. وأخيرا، أؤكد لكم أنه خلال هذه السنة سيتم تعزيز جهاز تفتيش الشغل بعدد كبير من مفتشي الشغل، سيخصص جزء منهم لمراقبة تطبيق الشغل المتعلق بالأطفال. وختاما، حضرات السيدات والسادة، أجدد الشكر للجهات المنظمة على هذا اللقاء الهام الذي سيشكل لا محالة مناسبة للتحسيس والتعبئة والترويج لخطة العمل العشرية المذكورة وتعزيز تملكها من طرف مختلف الفاعلين، وكذلك توحيد الرؤى وتبادل التجارب الفضلى والممارسة الجيدة في المجال. والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله. أتمنى أن أكون قد احترمت 3 دقائق. شكرا لكم السيدة الرئيسة، السيدات والسادة الزملاء.
Your Excellency, thank you very, very much for that contribution. Again, a beautiful outline of a plan in action. And perhaps one thing to emphasize in that plan is the focus on civil society and capacitating civil society to really work at the grassroots level and really ensure that the policies that are created at a national level are translating into a lived experience for children in communities. Your Excellency Amakras, thank you very much for an incredible contribution. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to Malawi next. Now, Malawi also is an Alliance 8.7 Pathfinder country, and it is one of the countries that has shown up really strongly in terms of being aware of the power of the whole of government approach, the idea of understanding and acting on the multiple dimensions of child labor. It's my pleasure now to welcome the Deputy Minister of Labor from the Republic of Malawi, Honorable Vera Kamtukule, to please take the floor. And as the Honorable takes the floor, the question to you, Honorable, is please tell us about your government strategies to end child labor, and in what ways are these strategies, Your Excellency, contributing to the implementation of the African Union Action Plan? The floor is yours. So the Honorable Kamtukule, if you are speaking, Madam, kindly please unmute. We can't hear you at the moment. I'm just going to give it 10 more seconds. In the event that we have not heard, we're not hearing the Honorable, we will revert back to the Honorable and come back to hear from Malawi. What we are going to do now is address another question that was put in through our global audience. And the question was, where are the employers' organizations and where are the trade unions? So we will definitely circle back to hear that. Now, I've just gotten a message from our technical team that the Honorable is definitely there. So I'm going to try again. I'm going to revert back and go back to Malawi. I'm going to call on the Deputy Minister of Labor, Honorable Vera Kamtukule. Thank you very much, Madam. Please go ahead.
Now, thank you so much for having Malawi on the floor. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you.
I'm having intermittent internet.
Thank you.
Malawi, as a member of the ILO, has ratified all the 8 core conventions and has failed convention. We are a member of Alliance 8.7, which is focused on achieving the UN SDG target 8.7. We also the African continent that have been admitted to the group of Pathfinder countries, which means we have pledged to move faster than the rest in achieving SDG target 8.7 from us. In order to fulfill this role, we are undertaking a number of initiatives that I'm going to outline below. Number 1, we have reviewed the child labor and formulated the National Child Labor Mainstreaming Guide, both of which were launched on 12 June 2020 during the commemoration of the World Day Against Child implementation, starting with sensitization of stakeholders, popularizing of the 2 strategy documents. The mainstreaming guide players into child labor elimination without necessarily calling for a commitment of additional resources, and hence it's very cost effective. Number 2, United Nations on Drugs and Crime, UNODC. Labor officers in Malawi and other enforcement officers of the Trafficking in Persons Act of 2015, the Act. Number 3, we are in the final stages of the development of the labor market information system that will give us data and report on administrative data, including child labor, forced labor, and human trafficking data. We are working with tobacco companies under the public-private partnership arrangement to intensify labor inspections in tobacco farming so as to address decent work deficits, including child labor and reported cases of forced labor. Number 4, the recently launched Malawi Vision 2063, that is also mirrored on the AU Vision 2063, emphasizes on access to education for every citizen up to secondary school level, And this is roughly 18 years of schooling, which will greatly help in reducing child labor, among other social. Flagship program of community technical colleges is expanding access to technical and vocational training for the enhancing youth employability, at the same time reducing cases of child labor among young people in Malawi. The Immigration Act of 1964, which is under review at the moment, will complement the Trafficking in Persons Act in checking cases of trafficking. Government has rolled out a peri-urban as a response to COVID-19 with the aim of alleviating the financial hardships of the urban poor. This has the effect of preventing children at risk from. Government of Malawi is moving towards the abolition of the tenancy labor system used in tobacco growing, which is associated with serious decent work deficits, which include child labor. I thank you so much for your attention. Thank you.
Honorable Kamtukule, thank you very much for that contribution. And despite some of your technical issues, the key messages were heard really loudly and clearly. You spoke about the phenomenon of mainstreaming, which is so important as an approach of ensuring that there is an interpretation of the continental vision to the national level. You spoke about Malawi's own Vision 2063, which is quite empowering. You also spoke about something we haven't heard in the conversation so far, and this idea of focusing on the peri-urban, and in particular, the urban poor, and how children in those contexts are oftentimes one of the most vulnerable. So thank you very much, Honorable, for that contribution. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to go now to a voice on the workers' organizations. I'm going to call on the General Secretary of the International Trade Union Confederation Africa. I'm going to ask Mr. Kwasi Adu Amankwa to please come online. And as he does, let's be reminded, ladies and gentlemen, that the ITUC has called for a new social contract that, if secured, will really deliver and galvanize quality education for all children as a key to achieving the elimination of child labor and, of course, of meeting SDG 8.7. So, Mr. Amankwa, over to you, sir. Thank you so much for being here. The floor is yours.
Thank you, moderator. And let me stand on all existing protocols. Excellencies and distinguished participants and partners, organized labor in Africa affirms that elements of slavery, forced labor, human trafficking, and child labor continue to persist in Africa. African workers and their unions welcome the launch of the International Year for the Elimination of Child Labour in Africa and the acceleration of the implementation of the African Union 10-year action plan on eradication of child labor, forced labor, human trafficking, and modern slavery in Africa. Child labor, forced labor, human trafficking, and other forms of modern slavery are practices that arrest the development of victims and deprive society of shared progress. As workers, we know that child labor means the intensification of adult unemployment. As parents, we know victims of child labor are more likely to perpetuate generational and gender poverty. And as responsible and conscious members of our communities, we know that everyone is a loser if we acquiesce in the perpetration of these practices. We make our commitment to do all that is necessary for the successful implementation of the plan. Specifically, we pledge to scale up our advocacy on the need for national implementation of child rights provisions, backed by up-to-date pieces of legislation and adequate funding, and also for improved labor inspection and the review of existing frameworks, especially those on the prevention, prosecution, and sanctions against those related to the perpetration of these practices. Further, as organized labor on the continent, we know that the development and effective deployment of social protection, and especially provisions such as educational opportunities for children and access to feeding programs for children at school, contribute to the elimination of child labor. This partly explains why African trade unions have been involved in the advocacy against advocacy campaign against corruption, and also to halt illicit financial flows from Africa. This is done in the belief that success at halting illicit financial flows will boost Africa's internal resource mobilization and contribute to benefit national budgets and social spending allocations. We commit to intensify this campaign against tax theft and also state capture. We also commit to scaling up our vigilance to improving state accountability and defeating impunity, and also for the broad observance of human and labor rights, because we believe this is at the heart of the new social contract that African and global workers have been calling for. Africa should certainly count us in. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Amankwa. Africa's count us in. I think that's such a beautiful way of closing that contribution. And again, some really incredible points from wrapping our heads around the gender and generational poverty that we need to address, but also you bring to the fore the issue of illicit financial outflows, and where the ability of African governments to really tackle this would increase social spending, which has, of course, the follow-on effect of allowing us to create more jobs and really ensuring that we are not exposing children and making children vulnerable to being in the labor market at an age that is not yet appropriate. Ladies and gentlemen, this section that we've just heard, the session that we've just had, really concludes the conversation that was really focusing on the implementation of the African Union 10-year action plan, implementation from a regional level, from governments, from employers, from workers. And so as we transition now to hear the voices of our partners, to hear their pledges in terms of their commitment on this journey, to ensure that we are really ending child labor in all its forms by 2025. We're going to hear this right on the other side of this. And this is a short contribution from a talented artist from the Democratic Republic of the Congo. And this is for a talented artist called Lokuwa Kanza. And he has a short message for all of us. Please do enjoy.
Siku inafika, mtoto mami na pashulale, duniani maneno, mtoto mami na pashulale.
Quand je partais à l'école, je voulais être un grand fonctionnaire, je voulais être ministre. Mais maintenant, quand je ne vais pas à l'école, je ne sais plus que je pouvais être ça.
Tota mami na pashulale, duniani maneno. Tota mami na pashulale, tota mama mlala. Je m'appelle Lokuwa Kanza. L'année 2021 a été déclarée l'année internationale de l'élimination du travail des enfants. 152 millions, dont 72,1 millions en Afrique, sont encore impliqués dans le travail. 31,5 millions de ces enfants font de travaux dangereux. Je vous appelle aujourd'hui à contribuer à lutter en vous engageant à agir cette année et au-delà. Parce que nos enfants méritent de grandir dans un environnement sain et stable, puisque leur vie, leur santé et leur éducation comptent plus que tout. Je compte sur Usiku inafika, tota mami na pashulale, duniani maneno, tota mami na pashulale, tota mama mlala.
It's a very big thank you from there, coming from the DRC. And of course, such a beautiful contribution, and reminding us again, as we've said, the importance of music is one of the things that binds us together. Now, ladies and gentlemen, As promised, we're now going to open the floor on this session to partners of the African Union and stakeholders who are in support of this journey, but also supporting through the implementation of the African Union Action Plan. And they're now going to take the floor to announce their 2021 action pledges or their intention to pledge. And so it's a good idea for us to maybe start with a short video to understand how exactly the pledges work, and then we'll open the floor. And so please enjoy a short video on how the pledges work.
Kids have wild imaginations. Their laughter can light up a room. They love to explore, play, and discover. Everyone has the right to a happy and safe childhood. That's why the United Nations has declared 2021 the International Year for the Elimination of Child Labour. Starting now, we're asking regions, countries, organizations, and individuals to join our mission to end child labor by making a 2021 action pledge. This commitment is the first step in our three-pillar strategy. Act. Choose a specific action that contributes to ending child labor. Inspire. Share your journey through stories and experiences. Scale up. Build upon your experience with fellow changemakers. Each action pledge will pave the way to ending child labor by 2025. Are you ready to submit yours? For children everywhere, let's get started. Together, we can make a difference. Visit endchildlabor2021.org or email us at 2021@alliance87.org for more information.
Indeed, together we can make a difference. Now, ladies and gentlemen, as I've indicated, we're opening the floor to partners of the African Union and other stakeholders to announce their pledges now, or their intention to pledge. Allow me to also just bring to your attention that the deadline for the submission of the 2021 action pledges is open until the 15th of May 2021, until the 15th of May 2021. It's my pleasure now to bring to you a message from the Director General of the International Labour Organization, Mr. Guy Ryder, who is going to share with us a message here and the pledge of the ILO. Ladies and gentlemen, the DG, Mr. Guy Ryder. To my technical...
Dear friends, it's a great pleasure to be part of the African launch of the International Year for the Elimination of Child Labour. Today, African leaders are sending a clear message that tackling child labour is a top priority in the continent. Significant strides have been made in the last 2 decades in the fight against child labour, including in Africa. Globally, there are nearly 100 million fewer children in child labour compared to 20 years ago. Progress achieved has not been easy, and it's been uneven, and we still have a long way to go. And today our challenge is compounded by the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. You recognize the need to act quickly because almost half of child laborers, that is some 72 million, are found on the African continent. And the pandemic has already forced many families into poverty or into deeper poverty. Companies are often struggling to survive and to maintain jobs. Millions of children are still out of school and more vulnerable than ever to child labor, and girls face particular hardships. Nevertheless, there are positive signs too. Countries are strengthening their social protection systems. They are targeting families living in poverty, helping to overcome the vulnerability caused by precarious family income, which is a root cause of child labor. Governments, business leaders, trade unions, civil society organizations, and local communities are finding innovative solutions to prevent child labor. They are protecting the rights of children and facilitating their return to school. And importantly, they are refusing to accept that child labour is an inevitable consequence of poverty and of crisis. Dear friends, children have a right to education and physical and mental health, and freedom from child labour and from forced labour is also an enabling condition for the full realisation of the decent work agenda and the Sustainable Development Goals. Crises do not change that reality. They call for heightened vigilance and for greater efforts. And so it is tremendously encouraging that all ILO member states have now ratified our Convention number 182 on the worst forms of child labour. And almost all ILO member states, 173 out of 187, have ratified Convention number 138 on minimum age for work. Universal ratification is a clear expression of the commitment to take immediate legal and practical action to protect children. But it's just the beginning. And that's why this International Year has to be about action, and you are showing the way. The African Union's 10-year action plan seeks to tackle the root causes of child labour, forced labour, and modern slavery, and human trafficking through education, social protection, and decent work for all adults. Your goals are ambitious, but realistic, combining immediate support to children trapped in child labour with attention also to underlying structural issues. Such action is also the path towards achieving Target 8.7 of the SDGs, and Africa is the first region to have adopted an action plan that is fully aligned with that target. This recognises that child labour and forced labour are interlinked and need an integrated response. And 12 African countries of the Alliance 8.7 have already made concrete commitments in their national strategies to fight child labour and forced labour. With the advent of the African Continental Free Trade Area, there is great opportunity to ensure freedom from child labour in regional supply chains, from agriculture to mining and tourism. And I assure you of the ILO's full support in the implementation of the action plan in line with the Abidjan Declaration that was adopted at the ILO African Regional Meeting in 2019. Another mark of Africa's commitment is the convening of the 5th Global Conference on the Elimination of Child Labour in 2022, this on the African continent in South Africa. The conference will give further impetus to action on the continent and globally, and the ILO looks forward to working with South Africa and all stakeholders to make it a success. So thank you for what you are doing to achieve a world free from child labour.
It's a massive thank you to the Director General of the International Labour Organization, highlighting, of course, the framing of this conversation today, that although we know that more than half of the world's children in child labour are coming from the continent or on the continent, it is encouraging to see that Africa is the first region to really begin to launch the International Year within the region. So we've seen a group of African countries coming forward and talking about the translation into their own national strategies and mainstreaming the efforts so that we really are able to turn this trend around. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure now to bring to you a message from internationally acclaimed child rights activist whose work has touched over 140 countries, so much so that he was awarded and recognized as a Nobel Peace Laureate in 2014 for these efforts. Please can we now turn our attention to a message from Mr. Kailash Satyarthi. Thank you so much.
My heartiest congratulations to the African Union and ILO for the launch of the year. I need not to repeat that the world is facing so serious problems due to this pandemic, and our children are going to suffer most if we don't act now. We have made remarkable progress in the decrease of child labor, in bringing more children to schools, We cannot afford to lose this. We cannot afford to reverse this. We know the problems and we know the solutions. We have enough resources and technology and knowledge. What is needed is a deep sense of urgency, genuine and collective political will and action. Africa is the source of inspiration. You have shown tremendous power and energy and resilience and success in challenging and changing this injustice of discrimination and exclusion. Today, you have to show the path. All Africa Student Union and many more organizations, NGOs, trade unions, teachers unions, parliamentarians, faith institutions, multilateral agencies have come together and launched a campaign this year, Fair Share to End Child Labour. I urge, dear friends who are sitting in the governments in Africa, to hold a special session on child labor. We are also demanding a special session of United Nations General Assembly to mark the International Year for the Elimination of Child Labour. We have to march from exploitation to education. We have to march from darkness to light. We will fight for it and we will win. Thank you.
And that's a massive thank you from Mr. Kailash Satyarthi, inviting us to march from darkness to light, in reminding us that Africa is the source of inspiration for the world, and now an opportunity to be a region that paves the way and creates a pathway for the rest of the world to follow. Ladies and gentlemen, I come to the next voice, which is the voice of the chair of the Alliance 8.7, Madame Anousheh Kavar. Of course, we know that Alliance 8.7 is a global partnership which was launched in the wake of the 2030 Development Agenda to really help member states achieve targets 8.7. And so with that, let's hear from Madame Kavar, please.
Excellences, Mesdames et Messieurs, chers collègues, permettez-moi tout d'abord de saluer par ce message le lancement par l'Union africaine de l'année internationale pour l'élimination du travail des enfants. L'Union africaine vient d'adopter un plan d'action décennal pour atteindre la cible 8.7 des objectifs de développement durable, qui comprend l'élimination du travail des enfants d'ici 2025 et du travail forcé, de la traite des personnes et l'esclavage contemporain d'ici 2030. Il s'agit d'une première mondiale que je voudrais saluer tout particulièrement. Le continent renouvelle par ce plan d'action une volonté politique et des engagements forts pour éradiquer ces fléaux. Le continent le démontre aussi avec ses 12 pays pionniers jusqu'ici de l'Alliance 8.7 qui s'engagent à redoubler d'efforts dans ce sens. Parmi les 4 thèmes de l'Alliance, le travail des enfants en Afrique mérite une attention particulière de la communauté internationale, puisqu'aux dernières estimations, 72 des 152 millions de victimes de travail des enfants se trouvent sur le continent. Avec la pandémie du Covid-19, qui s'ajoute aux conflits armés, aux changements climatiques et aux catastrophes naturelles, une plus grande part de nos populations les plus vulnérables, en particulier les enfants, se trouvent en risque. Plus que jamais, il est donc nécessaire de nous mobiliser. Nous connaissons bien certaines des causes profondes du travail des enfants en Afrique. On manque d'écoles et d'enseignants. L'économie informelle prédomine et n'offre pas de protection sociale aux travailleurs et à leurs familles. Les politiques d'achat injustes de certaines multinationales tirent les revenus vers le bas. Les inspecteurs du travail sont en nombre insuffisant. C'est en reconnaissant la complexité de ces causes profondes que notre génération peut mettre fin au travail des enfants. Elle peut le faire aussi si et seulement si nous adoptons une approche globale, concrète et structurelle. Une approche globale en mobilisant toutes les composantes de nos gouvernements, bien au-delà de nos ministères du Travail, avec les partenaires sociaux, les ONG et les acteurs économiques transnationaux directement impliqués dans des secteurs à risque élevé de travail des enfants, comme le cacao, le café, l'extraction minière ou le textile. Des réponses concrètes et structurelles aussi, en généralisant l'accès des enfants à l'éducation, en favorisant l'accès du plus grand nombre à des socles de protection sociale, en favorisant des politiques d'achat et de revenus équitables dans des secteurs économiques riches en emplois décents. À l'orée de la prochaine conférence mondiale en Afrique du Sud, le temps est plus que jamais à l'action. Le plan d'action décennal de l'Union africaine et votre détermination à le mettre en œuvre offre des motifs d'espoir. L'Alliance 8.7, avec ses 220 partenaires, avec ses pays pionniers du continent africain, s'engage à servir de plateforme de ressources et d'échanges pour favoriser l'accès aux données, à l'innovation et aux bonnes pratiques, et pour mesurer, avec rigueur et bienveillance, les progrès réalisés année après année. Unissons nos forces et menons un combat sans relâche pour éradiquer le travail des enfants et pour faire progresser la justice sociale. Je vous remercie.
Merci beaucoup, Madame Kava, for that contribution. Of course, highlighting the importance of coordinated resources, innovation that stems from best practice and knowledge sharing, and so much that the 225 partners of Alliance 8.7 could achieve together. I'd like to now go to the Netherlands, where we're going to be hearing from Mr. Steven Colette, who is the ambassador for sustainable development for the Netherlands. And of course, the Netherlands has just recently become a pathfinder country of Alliance 8.7. However, the Netherlands, we know, is a long-standing partner of the African continent and has always journeyed with the continent to end child labor in every form. So, Mr. Colette, the floor is yours, please, sir.
Thank you very much. A very good afternoon to you all. Ladies and gentlemen, excellencies, great to be here amongst friends. Please allow me to first congratulate the African Union with their action plan. We believe combating child labor is something we have to do together, all from our own roles and responsibilities. This requires collective action and cooperation, for no one can do this alone. And to facilitate this collaboration, we have to create a strong platform and invest in convening power to bring and keep us together. And therefore, I like to especially thank the African Union and ILO for inviting the Netherlands to this virtual table and to provide us with the opportunity to meet so many partners in combating child labor. As a major trader of commodities, the Netherlands is very committed to take actions to eliminate child labor via supply chains, especially in the light of target 8.7 of the Sustainable Development Goals. Every child deserves prospects for her or his future. Therefore, our Minister for Foreign Trade and Development and our Minister of Social Affairs and Employment have jointly declared the elimination of child labor as a priority on their agendas. And therefore, the Netherlands, as you mentioned, recently became pathfinder country in the Alliance 8.7. The Netherlands follows a three-track policy with regards to child labor. And let me be very brief. First, we focus on policy and good governance and on addressing the root causes of child labor. Therefore, we support partners and programs that contribute to access to quality education for all and bridging the gap to a living wage and a living income. Second, we financially support and partner with front-runner companies to eliminate child labor from their supply chains and spur laggards via our renewed responsible business conduct policy. We believe in a smart policy mix, including binding and voluntary measures. This includes also due diligence legislation, preferably at EU level. Third, we support local capacity building. And in this respect, I want to highlight our support to the Excel project with ILO. This 4-year program aims to eliminate child labor through supply chain of various sectors in 6 African countries. They're here today: Côte d'Ivoire, Egypt, Malawi, Mali, Nigeria, and Uganda. And the approach and objectives of the Excel program correspond to some of the major elements of the AU Action Plan, such as capacity building for effective national programs, legislation and enforcement, addressing child labor in priority sectors, statistics and knowledge management. And it's good to see that we can support each other here today and work collectively. Now, as a Pathfinder country, we also aim to cooperate with other Pathfinder countries and actors within the Alliance 8.7 to accelerate and scale our actions. And again, the Netherlands congratulates the African Union with the action plan, and we look forward to continuing our efforts to achieve those ambitious goals set for 2025, 4 years from now. Let's work together to end child labor everywhere, by everyone, period. We owe it to our children. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Colette. Let's work together to end child labor for everyone. And I love the last word that you used, period. And that really just is the emphasis that we are looking for today. Thank you also for raising the issue of supply chains and how you're using a smart policy mix to make sure that as you partner with companies, we are eradicating child labor from any supply chain for any company. Thank you very much for that. Now, ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure now to share with you a message from Madame Erika Gerritsen, who is the head of the Unit on Sustainable Finance, Investment and Jobs, and this in the Director General for International Partnerships from the European Commission. And so let's hear now a message from Madame Gerritsen.
Honorable Ministers, distinguished guests, what an honor and a pleasure to be able to say a few words on this important occasion. First, let me stress from the outset the European Commission's unwavering support to our common cause. In promoting the European Union's fundamental values, the European Commission has indeed been supporting the fight against child labor for years. Our President, Mrs. Ursula von der Leyen, has further reinforced this engagement by requesting a zero-tolerance policy against child labor. Second, we are in this together within our unique European Union-Africa partnership. The EU and the African Union enjoy a unique partnership built on common values and commitments to achieve the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. The EU-Africa strategy, which was adopted in 2020, is an excellent basis to further strengthen and boost this ambitious partnership. The EU will continue to support African partners in their efforts to address the root causes of child labor for a systemic, transformative, and sustainable change. We will continue to help empower women and youth through adequate skills to access decent jobs. We will work to identify and address the main drivers of social and economic inequalities and extend social welfare programs to help lift families out of poverty. We will furthermore support the transition from informal to formal economy and promote social dialogue to improve both the social and the business climate. All these actions are instrumental to end child labor. Children's rights are universal, and the EU reinforces its commitments to protect, promote, and fulfill these rights across the globe. And it is crucial that we continue doing this together, and I would like to illustrate this with a few examples. For example, in the agriculture value chains, we are working in Burkina Faso in the Clear Cotton Project, and as well as in Mali. And we also have, as you probably know, a multi-stakeholder discussions of the EU in the Sustainable Cocoa Initiative in Côte d'Ivoire and in Ghana. Third, I am pleased to mention that only last week, the European Commission has adopted a new EU strategy on the rights of the child with key actions contributing to end of child labor worldwide. And here is what we pledged. 4 points. First, to devote 10% of our aid to partner countries to free and inclusive education, schools are the best place for children to work for their future. Second, to ensure supply chains of EU companies are free from child labor, notably by promoting sustainable corporate governance. Third, to provide technical assistance to strengthen labor inspection systems for monitoring and enforcing child labor law and administration. Fourth, to ensure that partner countries update regularly national lists of hazardous work that children should never perform. Finally, and I will end with a few words to explain that we will continue building up knowledge through better data and stronger awareness. The International Year is pivotal to this end, and today's event is paramount. The EU is already committed to participating in the 5th Global Conference on the Elimination of Child Labour in 2022 in South Africa. This, dear colleagues and friends, is what we stand for and what we work for. That is what we want to do together as a team and with you. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much for that message from Madame. Emphasizing again the women and youth angle, and of course, Team Europe is certainly a hashtag that is catching on as we listen to various contributions across global conversations. It's my pleasure now to go to the other side of the world and to go to the US, where we have standing by from the US Department of Labor, Senior International Relations Officer, Madame Sarah Sunderland. And as Madame Sunderland comes on, ladies and gentlemen, let's be reminded that the US government has for almost 3 decades supported efforts to end child labor and forced labor around the world. And this moment is no different. Madame Sunderland, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Representatives of the African Union and the ILO, thank you for organizing this important event and providing the US Department of Labor the chance to participate. As those in attendance know, according to the latest global estimates, 1/5 of African children were in child labor. That is over 72 million children, with nearly half in hazardous work. It is likely that the COVID-19 pandemic has contributed to increased vulnerability to child labor for many children. In light of this current situation, it is more critical than ever that we take advantage of the valuable opportunity offered by the International Year for the Elimination of Child Labour to renew our commitment to a world free of child labour. The US Department of Labor applauds the African heads of state for making this commitment through the adoption of the AU 2020 to 2030 10-year action plan to eradicate child labour, forced labour, human trafficking, and modern slavery. The department is proud to have supported the development of this plan and thanks all signatories for the efforts they will undertake to make the goals of the plan a reality. We are likewise proud to provide support for the collaboration between the Latin America and the Caribbean Free of Child Labour Regional Initiative and the AU on good practices, including the development of maps to identify communities at risk of child labour. Today, we renew our commitment not only for 2021, but for the years to come as we all work towards eradicating child labour. Since 1995, the department has funded over 93 technical assistance projects to combat child labour and forced labour in over 42 countries on the African continent. In addition, the department has also funded a number of global projects with components in African countries as well. We are proud to continue to stand with all of you to promote a world in which, as President Biden has said, internationally recognized human rights and fundamental freedoms are each equally the entitlement of all. Thank you again for inviting us to participate today in this regional launch event.
Thank you very much, Madam Sunderland, for your contribution, and of course, reminding us the importance that human rights are something that should be available to everyone, bringing again the core of that conversation and centering it within the context of child labor in Africa. Thank you very much, Madam Sunderland. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm now going to move to the government of Japan. We're going to hear from the Japan International Cooperation Agency, also known as JICA, which we know has been making important contributions, development contributions in Africa in areas such as education, skills training, rural development, health and social protection. And so it's my pleasure now to introduce Senior Director for the Law and Justice team, Mr. Kobayashi Yoshuk, to please take the floor on behalf of JICA. Sir, the floor is yours. Just checking in, we can't hear you yet. If you could unmute yourself if you are speaking, please, sir.
Yes, do you hear me now?
Yes, perfectly. Thank you
so
much.
Great, thank you. Excellencies, distinguished guests, it is a great honor for me to have this opportunity to give a few words at this very important meeting. JICA is the implementing agency of Japanese government's official development assistance. With the African Union, we have a long-standing partnership in various sectors, especially through collaboration with AU agencies such as the AUDA NEPAD and the African CDC. With the ILO, we are strengthening our partnership through specific collaborative activities on child labor elimination with ILO colleagues in the headquarters, Bangkok, Cote d'Ivoire, Laos, and Japan, among others. JICA focuses on the concept of human security, the concept that builds on the premise that all individuals are entitled to freedom from fear, freedom from want, and the freedom to live in dignity. And better future of children has always been JICA's top priority. Through cooperation in education, health, nutrition, gender equality, and other sectors, we have been working hard with countries in Africa and other regions to improve the lives of children for decades. And while our direct explicit focus on child labor elimination has been somewhat limited in these efforts, in this International Year for the Elimination of Child Labor, we are committed to change. Our renewed focus on human security is calling upon us to change. The adverse impact of COVID-19 on children is calling upon us to change. The approaching deadline for SDG target 8.7 is calling upon us to change. It is in response to these calls for change that we hereby make this 2021 action pledge to support developing countries' efforts to eliminate child labor. Specifically, in Ghana, we will be implementing pilot activities on child labor-free zones in collaboration with the Ghanaian government and Japanese partners, including a prominent Japanese NGO, ACE, and consultant ICNet, with an eye to scale up in the future. In Lao PDR in Asia, we will be supporting the government's implementation of the National Child Labor Survey in partnership with the ILO. In Japan, we will be partnering with members of the Sustainable Cocoa platform in the private sector to inspire citizens to work together for eliminating child labor in Africa and other regions. Today, I was very excited to receive an update on AU's 10-year action plan. Africa's development is one of the top priorities for JICA, and Africa's future development depends on Africa's children. As we prepare for the 8th Tokyo International Conference on African Development to be held in Tunisia next year, we hope to explore new opportunities for collaboration with partners here today, building upon the AU Action Plan to make a real difference in the national, regional, and global progress toward child labor elimination. Thank you very much for this opportunity and your attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Yosuke. And loving how you're raising the different calls to change and showing JICA's responsiveness to that and saying we are agile and we are responding to the real issues on the ground, and we're deepening our relationship with the African continent in a range of different ways. Thank you very much for your contribution, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to take you now to a message from a speaker who's going to be speaking on behalf of Latin America and Caribbean Regional Initiative. I'd like to take you to 2017, where the government of Argentina, which had organized the 4th Global Conference, which I was also very privileged to be the moderator at, on the elimination of child labor. And this particular conference, the government of Argentina and the African Union jointly pledged to cooperate more and to work together to build capacities to prevent child labor. And so it's a pleasure now to give the floor to the Secretary of Labor and Social Welfare from Mexico, Madame Luisa Maria Lujan, to please take the floor and to share with us on behalf of the Latin America and Caribbean Regional Initiative on Child Labor. Secretary of Labor, the floor is yours, Madame. Thank you very much.
Thank you. On behalf of Government of Mexico, I congratulate the Commission of the African Union and the ILO Region Office for Africa on the launch of the International Year for the Elimination of Child Labour. I want to thank you for the invitation. It is an honor to participate alongside all of you. This year represents a crucial opportunity for our countries to strengthen our cooperation ties and generate synergies in achieving the important goal of putting a definitive end to child labor by 2025. In this regard, the government of Mexico reaffirms its willingness to continue working jointly at the international and regional level to achieve the 8.7 goal of the 2030 agenda. In September 2019, Mexico assumed its role as a pathfinder country of Alliance 8.7 for accelerating efforts to adopt actions, plans, and political commitments to eradicate child labor. As a pathfinder country of the Latin America and the Caribbean Free of Child Labor Region Initiative, Mexico has been a strong promoter of South-South cooperation initiatives within our region to exchange and replicate good practices focused on the eradication of child labor. This includes the child labor risk identification model, which is an evidence-based tool to identify risk factors for child labor at the territorial level to adopt specific public policies. When we consider the implementation of effective public policies, we envision them as nationwide efforts that must be carried out across all ministries and state levels in order to address the actual roots of child labor, that is poverty and exclusion. Certainly, it is vital to enforce the rule of law through inspections in strategic sectors that where the problem is more prevalent. However, this accomplishes little if we doesn't come with policies that address the structural causes of child labor. For these reasons, the government of Mexico has strengthened its welfare system in order to ensure no family is pushed into sending their child into work through policies such as a major scholarship program for preventing school dropout, a program for single working mothers to help them balance their work and family lives, and economic aid to small agricultural producers, allowing them to increase their family income. Finally, I hope we can look back in a couple of years on 2021 as the conclusive year when all our countries joined together to create a world free of child labor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much to the Secretary of Labor and Social Welfare of Mexico, really representing the Latin American Caribbean regional initiative. Thank you for speaking to some of those structural causes of child labor. And in particular, you spoke about the need to look at policy that speaks to single mothers and their reality, that seeks to stop school dropouts, that funds smallholder farmers so that they can produce more for their families. This is the level of detail that policy needs to speak to. And you've done a fantastic job of giving us some very real and practical examples. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure now to go to His Excellency, the Minister of Labour and Social Security from Cameroon, His Excellency Gregoire Owono, who is standing by to also share from a Cameroonian perspective what the country is doing. Your Excellency Owono, the floor is yours.
Merci aussi de nous donner la parole. Et je dois dire tout de suite qu'en m'alliant sur beaucoup de choses qui ont été dites, je voudrais préciser que la volonté du gouvernement camerounais d'éradiquer le travail des enfants, et en particulier ces pires formes, s'inscrit en droite ligne des objectifs du programme de développement durable à l'horizon 2030. Dans la mouvance de l'engagement mondial déclarant l'année 2021 comme année internationale pour l'élimination du travail des enfants, le Cameroun a poursuivi avec détermination la lutte contre ce phénomène sur son territoire à travers des actions fortes et des initiatives très encourageantes. Il s'agit entre autres de la mise en œuvre du plan d'action national pour l'élimination des pires formes du travail des enfants au Cameroun, PANETEC en abrégé, de la tenue régulière des sessions du Comité national de lutte contre le travail des enfants, de l'adhésion à l'initiative Alliance 8.7 en qualité de pays pionnier, et de l'organisation d'un atelier national d'identification des actions prioritaires pour la lutte contre le travail des enfants, le travail forcé et la traite des personnes dans le cadre de cette plateforme mondiale. Comme pour les prochaines actions pilotes dans cet élan, le Cameroun procédera d'une part à l'actualisation des données statistiques sur le travail des enfants et d'autre part à la mise en place d'un système d'observation et de suivi du travail des enfants au Cameroun, fondé sur la capacité de la communauté, des autorités et acteurs au niveau local à observer et à suivre régulièrement le phénomène du travail des enfants. Le Cameroun reste donc ainsi très attentif aux orientations de la présente cérémonie pour une meilleure implémentation du plan d'action de l'Union africaine sur le travail des enfants, le travail forcé, la traite des êtres humains et l'esclavage moderne. Je vous remercie.
Merci beaucoup, Your Excellency, for that contribution. And of course, highlighting again the importance of capacitating local stakeholders to really be the drivers of monitoring and evaluation on the ground. Another unique insight and perspective that we are hearing. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to give the floor now to the Minister of Public Service and Labour from Rwanda. It's my pleasure to introduce Honorable Rwaindo Kairiwanga Fanfan, the Minister of Public Service and Labour. The floor is yours, Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Nozi. Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, I have the pleasure to join you today as we reiterate our shared commitment as a continent to eliminate and prevent child labor in Africa and accelerate the implementation of the African Union 10-year action plan on an eradication of child labor, forced labor, human trafficking, and modern slavery in Africa. In this regard, I would like to reaffirm the commitment of the government of Rwanda. The regional launch of the International Year for the Elimination of Child Labour in Africa is an opportunity. The regional launch of the International Year for the Elimination of Child Labour in Africa is an opportunity for us to recall that African children deserve the right to their full development, for them to be able to play in the future a significant role in building the Africa we want. Effective implementation of the African Union 10-year action plan on eradication of child labor, forced labor, human trafficking, and modern slavery in Africa will require the following: political will at all levels, strong institutional frameworks, elaboration of policies and laws and effective enforcement, social programs that target the most vulnerable, coordination of various stakeholders, and community awareness and engagement. In line with this, allow me to highlight some of the relevant efforts of the government of Rwanda with focus on total elimination and prevention of child labor that have resulted into positive achievements. In 2017, the government of Rwanda put in place a national strategy for transformation, NST1, and social transformation is one of its main pillars. To the social transformation pillar, the government of Rwanda has consistently demonstrated its commitment for child protection by setting up relevant policies, strategies, programs, and projects that address root causes of child labor. A clear institutional framework, including the National Child Development Agency, was also established to ensure optimal child development and combat all forms of physical, moral, psychological abuse of children. We have also established child labor elimination and prevention committees from national, provincial, districts, sector, cell to village levels, and mainstreamed child labor elimination and prevention into district imihigo, or in English, performance contracts. Also, new technologies of information and communication are being used to identify and address cases of child labor. The public is provided with free hotlines that are used to report cases for timely follow-up. In addition, we have developed an integrated labor administration information system, ILAS, through which reported cases of child labor are accessible and monitored at both the ministry and the district levels. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Rwanda abides by various international and regional instruments related to elimination of child labor, forced labor, human trafficking, and modern slavery. Various national laws have been enacted or existing ones reviewed in order to ensure that the legal framework in place responds well to emerging issues. Meriting mentioning, effective legal enforcement will be very critical in eliminating child labor, forced labor, human trafficking, and modern slavery in Africa. Also noting various causes of child labor, forced labor, human trafficking, and modern slavery in Africa, improving the living conditions of citizens and uplifting the most poor from poverty can go a long way in protecting many potential victims. In this regard, various social programs can play a positive role, including pursuing efforts to create jobs for African youth and women. Finally, coordination of all efforts is also paramount, noting that various stakeholders must play different roles, but complementary, collaboratively towards elimination and prevention of child labor, forced labor, human trafficking, and modern slavery in Africa. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, as I conclude, I would like to reaffirm the government's of Rwanda commitment to implement all key strategic intervention areas of 10-year action plan on eradication of child labor, forced labor, human trafficking, and modern slavery in Africa, in collaboration with the AU, ILO, and other partners. I also wish to reiterate our readiness to share our practices and learn from each other as we all keep our shared vision of an Africa that is free from child labor, forced labor, human trafficking, and modern slavery. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister Fanfan, for that contribution coming in from Rwanda. Again, a unique perspective as you're highlighting the role of technology in terms of really getting to the districts and getting to the villages in helping monitor and evaluate some of the initiatives from the government and other stakeholders. Thank you very much, Minister, for that contribution. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm making my way now to the Ministry of Social Affairs of Tunisia, where Her Excellency, Madame Rouda Lajmi, is standing by, the Director General in the Social Defense Ministry of Social Affairs in Tunisia. Let me call upon Madame Lajmi. The floor, Madame, is yours for now. Please take over. Madame Lajmi, if you are speaking, you're on mute at the moment. May you kindly please unmute so we can hear you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we might have a technical issue, and given the opportunity, I will certainly circle back to Tunisia. Allow me then to go to the Food and Agriculture Organization. We have Dr. David Peary standing by. We know, of course, that this is an organization that is taking on the challenge of one of the sectors that we do see the most prevalent forms of child labor, that is the agricultural sector. And so with that, Dr. Chimamba Peary, I'd like to hand over the floor to you as we hear what the FAO has to pledge at this particular point.
Thank you very much, moderator. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, all protocols observed. On behalf of the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, FAO, I wish to congratulate the African Union and ILO in organizing this launch event. FAO pledges to intensify its work addressing child labor in agriculture through a dedicated work program within the FAO Corporate Strategic Framework. To achieve SDG Target 8.7, we need a breakthrough in agriculture, where 85% of children in child labor are, and also a breakthrough in Africa, where 1 in 5 children is in child labor. Child labor in agriculture harms children, damages the agricultural sector, and perpetuates rural poverty. This year, FAO will step up its efforts to strengthen the capacities of a wide range of agricultural actors to include child labor, prevention, and decent youth employment in their work. Policies, strategies, programs, and investments related to agri-food systems need to address the root causes of child labor, including household poverty. FAO will organize a regional consultation in Africa and in other regions to give voices to agricultural actors, and a global event in November 2021 on child labor in agriculture to increase awareness of the many good practices and promising experiences. The related outcomes will constitute a significant contribution on the important role of agriculture and the broader agri-food systems to the 5th Global Conference on Child Labor in 2022. FAO will continue to play a central role in the International Partnership for Cooperation on Child Labor in Agriculture. In collaboration with other strategic partners, FAO intends to contribute to the implementation of the African Union 10-year action plan, in particular with regard to helping eradicate child labor in agriculture. FAO's comprehensive framework for eliminating child labor in agriculture provides many entry points and good practices that the African Union, regional economic communities, member states, FAO, and many other actors in agriculture can make use of. Examples of this are to apply labor-saving practices and technology, provide safe work for adolescents, targeting poor households that are at risk of making use of child labor within food security and agricultural investment programs, and to give particular attention to measures such as social protection that reduce the economic dependency of poor households on child labor. Throughout the year, we will strengthen existing collaboration and seek new partners to scale up our efforts. To achieve zero hunger, we must have zero child labor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Piri. To achieve zero hunger, we must have zero child labor. Now that is an emphatic call to action. Ladies and gentlemen, we are aware of some requests that have come from some of our guests, our audience members wishing to take to the floor. And unfortunately, in this particular meeting, we are not going to be able to open the floor to any speakers that are not on the agenda. But please do rest assured that the team is putting together a number of opportunities throughout this international year for the elimination of child labor, and there will be more and more opportunities to have your voices heard. We are, of course, humbled by the great interest to engage and to claim your share of voice, but we are unfortunately not in a position at this moment to open the floor to any speaker not on the agenda. So please, I apologize in advance. I'd like to now go to UNICEF, please, ladies and gentlemen, where we're going to hear from the policy and advocacy specialist from the UNICEF office to the African Union and the ECA. Ladies and gentlemen, taking the floor now is Mr. Jepte Mbo Mbondo, which I hope I have pronounced correctly. Sir, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Moderator, and UNICEF is honored to be part of this very important event. Excellency, dear partners, ladies and gentlemen, child labor deprives children of their childhood and their future as it interferes with schooling and leisure. It is harmful to a child's physical, mental, social, and moral development. School closure currently practiced in some countries as a measure of controlling the spread of the COVID pandemic are making matters worse. When children can no longer go to school, many will get attracted to exploitative and hazardous form of work. Ongoing conflicts in many parts of the continent that are forcing millions of families and children to move out of their communities are also a major driver of child labor and human trafficking. When they migrate alone or with families, children can be forced into labor, trafficked, or sexual exploitation. As we launch the International Year for the Elimination of Child Labour in Africa in these unprecedented times, UNICEF notes that governments across the world, including in Africa, and we have had the opportunity to hear many ministers saying it today, have taken bold measures that could help in addressing the root causes of child labor. Many governments have accelerated efforts to deploy social workers in communities, equipping them with mobile phones and digital technology. Some are strengthening online learning platforms. Others are expanding social protection programs like cash transfer that are targeting the most vulnerable. We can all be inspired by these efforts, but we need to do more. UNICEF therefore calls for 6 specific actions to take that has to be taken collectively. 1, we need to increase investment in child protection programs that prevent and respond to all forms of violence, abuse, and exploitation, including child labor. 2, as a continent, we have to reimagine education to improve both quality and quantity. 3, we have, as school reopen, we need to work towards reducing school dropout by offering supplementary programs such as school feeding, free uniform, and books. 4, we need to implement more social protection programs to help households make ends meet. 5, we need to call for businesses to step up and ensure that conduct across supply chain address child labor issue. 6, we need to advocate for government to strengthen child labor regulation across the board, from laws and policy to workplace. As UNICEF, we stand by the African Union Commission to support implementation of the African Union 10-year Plan of Action on Eradication of Child Labour, Forced Labour, Human Trafficking, and Modern Slavery. Working with ILO and many other partners, UNICEF pledges to 1, continue to make children visible by investing in collecting data on the situation of children in Africa, including child labor data, to inform decision-making and policy formulation at the AU. 2, we pledge to continue supporting programs which aim to make social protection accessible to all, especially the most vulnerable population. 3, we pledge to continue support the AU programs which aim to end harmful practices and change in harmful social norms while empowering local community. 4, we pledge to continue supporting the AU Education Transformative Agenda through DOTS to make education accessible and responsive to the need of all children, including those trapped in child labor. Finally, UNICEF pledged to support AU efforts towards responding to humanitarian crisis and conflict. We focus on addressing the protection needs of migrant children. I thank you, Madam Moderator.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mbondo. And again, you're raising a unique perspective here through the lens of UNICEF on looking at migration patterns, looking at humanitarian crises. And one of the points that I really loved was, how do we make children more visible? And that we do that with better data that leads to better decisions and better policies. Thank you very much for your contribution today. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we are almost at the end of the session, and one of the ways I'm going to come towards the tail end of our time is to share with you a message from the Minister of Employment and Labour in South Africa, Minister Thulas Nxesi, on, of course, the announcement of the 5th Global Conference on the Elimination of Child Labour that will be hosted by the South African government in 2022. Here's a short message from the Minister now.
Chairperson and colleagues, in the face of adversity and the COVID-19 pandemic, we continue to make progress. Congratulations to the 187 ILO member states on the universal ratification of Convention 182 on the worst forms of child labor on the 4th August 2020. Child labor remains a huge challenge for the African continent. In 2016, a fifth of African children, that's 72 million, they were performing child labor, nearly half undertaking hazardous work. 3 million adults and 500,000 children were victims of child of forced labor, human trafficking, and modern slavery. Women and girls were greatly affected, with 6 million in forced marriages. We therefore welcome the adoption of the UN Resolution 72327 that declares 2021 as an international year for elimination of child labor. In February 2020, the African continent adopted the 10-year action plan to eradicate child labor, forced labor, human trafficking, and modern slavery. That's 2020 to 2030, providing an immediate framework to accelerate progress towards the achievement of the AU Agenda 2063 and target the 8.8 of the Sustainable Development Goals. This all builds momentum towards the 5th Global Conference on Child Labour that will take place in South Africa in 2022, providing an opportunity for the continent to provide leadership and strengthen commitments to ending child labor in all its forms by 2025, and ending the forced labor, human trafficking, and modern slavery by 2020. The 2019 ILO Centenary Declaration provides a template on how this can be achieved. We analyze the root causes of child labor and then deploy socioeconomic interventions such as the labor market tools, education and training, and social security measures to eliminate child labor and related problems. Ladies and gentlemen, we look forward to welcoming you to South Africa in May 2022, hopefully in a post-COVID-19 environment. Thank you.
It's a massive thank you to the Minister of Employment and Labour in South Africa, Minister Thembelani Thulas-Nxesi, speaking to us, of course, about the upcoming 5th Global Conference in May 2022. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I have a very special guest that I just would like to introduce to you now as we begin to wrap up. She is a child activist. She uses her voice to advocate against child trafficking, to advocate for literacy. She is the youngest published author of 5 books and published her first book, and you've got to hear this age. She published her first book at the age of 7. She has won multiple awards for her work, and today she's been sitting, listening in to our conversation, and now would like to share her own words and observations on what she's just heard. Please help me welcome Miss Stacey Frew, South African child activist, for a special contribution now.
Good afternoon. Dear adults, I thank you for this platform and for the beautiful introduction of myself. As you heard, I am a 14-year-old from Johannesburg, South Africa, who has published a book on child abduction and child trafficking. I'm growing up in the City of Gold, a city where, like everywhere else in the world, children are expected to have a childhood. After about 2.5 hours of hearing you all talk, I'm proud to know that adults have children's best interest at heart. The discussions here today make me proud to be associated with a drive to bring humility to children across the globe. Many of these children have been forced by poverty, inequality, and civil war to flee their homes, or have deliberately stepped out to become slaves to money and material. Many more children are forced by laborers who are working against their will. Most children who are victims of economic exploitation do domestic work in private households. In all these cases, these children are exploited for money. The situation is likely worse now as the COVID-19 pandemic ravages our planet. A clear guideline to children and adults alike from myself is that if you do nothing about child labor, you are encouraging it. We have to stand up for a child, not just in conferences like these, but within our households, street corners, and even institutions. On behalf of all children, those involved, and those who will never experience child labor, I thank the African Union and the International Labour Organization for the initiative to stop child labour by the year 2025. As I express my gratitude, I worry because history shows that most of the campaigns on education of many other malpractices have not come to reality for many reasons. My focus today is on the eradication of child labour. So permit me ask, are you ready to make the change that you are announcing? Are you aware that these figures that you have given us today on child labourers are not just statistics, but children wasting both their childhoods and their futures? These figures are real. These statistics represent real children who are most likely on their way to work, actually working, or returning from hours of hard labour as we speak. These children wake up and don't get to experience the joy of exploration that every child has the right to. As our previous esteemed speakers have said, are you aware that your promises to eradicate child labour will not lead to more cost, but they will lead to a better investment for the future of our nations? Do you know that today you are committing to a future for children who have to become educated adults in order to create better decisions for their futures? As I leave you today, I want you to remember that the children of Africa and of the world have their eyes on you and how you define our future. I know you can eliminate child labour, but I also call on all children to focus on education and skills development, because in some cases, the power to grow up is in our hands. In all that we do, let us remember that safety and security is the key to unlock literacy. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Stacey Frew. Thank you for that beautiful message. Are you ready to make the change? Are you ready to take the actions that you have promised? And of course, she reminds us, if we do nothing, it means that we are encouraging child labor. Certainly, listening to the likes of Stacey Frew, we know that our future policymakers, our future leaders, and our future decision makers certainly have the best interests of Africa at heart. Thank you very much, Stacey Frew. Ladies and gentlemen, we've come to the absolute end of our time together. It's my pleasure now that if I could please call upon Madame Mariam Cisse. She started off us earlier today with an outline of the action plan, and today she's going to be speaking on behalf of Her Excellency Amira El Fadil, just to give us a vote of thanks and to share some of her own closing remarks. Madam, it's over to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, moderator, for this wonderful moderation. So, honorable ministers, excellencies, commissioners, excellencies, ambassador, representative from member state and partner country across the world, representative from UN agencies, international organization, CSO, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I would like to present the sincere apology from Her Excellency Amira El Fadil, Commissioner for Health, Humanitarian Affairs and Social Development, who had to attend to an urgent matter. And on her same behalf, I would like to thank all honorable ministers, partners, and all participants who took time to their busy schedule in this COVID era to be part and contribute to this very important event and for their pledges. I would like to thank the commissioners who lent their precious voice in the event and commit to engage their policy organ. Let me also thank Madam Cynthia Samuel, the ILO Regional Director, for her contribution toward the fight against child labor. Distinguished participants, I would like to assure you that the AU will invest in the implementation of a plan of action, and as a follow-up to the launch, we will again have a separate virtual meeting with the UN organization, the development agencies community, and the regional economic community. In addition, immediate measure will be taken for further in-house coordination between the relevant African Union department, and we recognize that time is for action, and we will spare no effort for the energy toward accelerated eradication of child labor on the continent. Special thanks to the moderator, the interpreter, the AUC, and the ILO team for their dedication and commitment to the successful of this event. Special thanks and also to the children who attended this event. I thank you so much and good evening.
Madam Cisse, thank you very much for those closing remarks. And that, ladies and gentlemen, wraps up our time together. It's been an incredible 3-hour conversation where we really are hearing practical pledges and actions to ensure that we are implementing on the 10-year plan, that we're coming together for that support, that we are coordinating our actions, that we are sharing knowledge amongst ourselves, that we're lifting up best practice, that we are focusing on more data-driven policy measures, and that we are doing all of this while mobilizing resources and investing in the right places so that this dream that we have of eliminating child labor in all its forms, of human trafficking, of modern day slavery, that all of this can be achieved by 2025. Ladies and gentlemen, for myself here in Johannesburg, South Africa, it has been an absolute privilege to serve you today as the moderator of this very important global conversation. Thank you to each and every one of you for being here. Thank you for your voices. Thank you to our global audience for putting through your questions and your comments and for engaging with us. Thank you so much. It's goodbye for now.